January 18th, it's 7:04. Review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustments of any items. Do we have anything, Val?
No, other than just to mention that some of the minutes are going to be delayed. So we just one set.
Yep. Okay. As you know, we're all Zoom. Please mute yourself. If you need to ask a question, raise your hand, swing your hand, send a chat. We'll try and keep track of all that. Public forum, chance for somebody, if they'd like to say something that is not currently on the agenda, that would take less than 5 minutes. Perfect. Regular business. Kristen Underwood and others, National Science Foundation Smart and Connected Communities Grant Application Proposal and Authorization Request. You have the floor, Kristen.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is a proposal. I'm wearing my day job hat as a UVM research professor. It's a proposal that we put in on behalf of the town back in September 2019. It was not approved for funding at the time, but they came back to us and asked us to resubmit and pare down our scope and our budget a little bit. So we're in the process of revising our proposal to essentially work with two communities. Bristol is one and Westford is the other, to enable smart technologies that would monitor wastewater systems in order to demonstrate actual real-time usage of those systems. And our hope would be that that would enable those wastewater systems to increase the number of users or increase their capacity. And we've gotten quite a lot of strong support from Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation on this project, as well as several other partners or collaborators on this proposal, including Alan Huizinga, who's here tonight, also Stone Environmental, and Julie Beth Hines are project partners, along with Green Mountain Engineering on the Westford piece of this proposal. So I gave a revision of the letter of collaboration to Valerie, and my question for the board tonight would be, would you like to participate once again as a collaborator in this proposal? It would be 3 years of funding, approximately on the order of $100,000 to $150,000 would be allocated to the town of Bristol to support improvements to the wastewater system that would involve these kinds of smart connections.
And my understanding, Kristen, there's no match for us. This is all just via the grant or whatever.
Correct. There's no requirement for matching funding from the town. There would be an expectation for some modest staff time to from Valerie and maybe from the wastewater folks to allow us to be connected to the system. And then there would be funding for some of the collaborators, including Green Mountain Engineering, to support their time in helping us to kind of dovetail these smart technologies with the existing wastewater system design.
Val, I assume that Cy and them they were aware of this before on the last one, so I assume they're on board. They're muted.
I have not had a direct conversation with them recently, but I expect that they would be very interested to participate.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Kristen?
Kristen, have there been other towns that have used this kind of technology, and if so, what were their results, or how did it help?
To our knowledge, in the state of Vermont anyway, there are no other systems that have used this kind of technology. It's kind of cutting edge. That's why folks like Stone Environmental are so excited about it. These would be the first two towns that would undertake this kind of smart technology to measure actual usage real time. And the hope would be that these two pilot towns would serve as an example for the other many other towns and villages around the state, and open up a secondary theme to this proposal is to open up revitalization of these downtowns and reuse and revitalization of historic buildings. And so if it works successfully in these two towns, it can be a model that we can use to introduce to many other towns across the state and across the region, for that matter, New England region.
I have another question. So in terms of monitoring, where does the actual technology sit? Is it on the property end to be able to monitor what's used coming from the property?
By that, do you mean the user that's connected to the system?
Yes.
Okay. That's to be determined, honestly, at this point. We expect there would be monitoring in the wastewater system itself, but there could as well be remote monitoring on participating users with their permission.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, it sounds like a great project.
Any other questions?
So,
Go ahead, Joel.
Kristen, you said that'd be between 100 and 150 total, or is that a year per year for 3 years?
Total over the 3 years, but it could be right up front in the first year. For example, that's what we're envisioning is probably in the first year for Bristol. Westford is in a different situation because they're just embarking on design and development of a wastewater system, whereas Bristol has an existing system already in place. So those funds could come in probably at the early side of those 3 years for Bristol.
Could those funds be used for improvements to the system?
Potentially, it's very flexible how these monies are used. National Science Foundation, their main goal, quite honestly, is to train new researchers, and not so much. So it's not like a typical grant system, which would have maybe very defined deliverables. So what that means is that it's a very flexible budget for the town, and we'd be happy to work with the town to better understand what your needs are and work with Alan and others. And we can tailor those funds to those needs.
Okay. I know Alan can speak to it. Many years ago when he was on the board's goal was always try to get more users, but to get more users, there's some system, we got a pre-treat system to put in, correct, Alan? And
yeah, that's correct, Joel. We were looking into a pre-treatment system to increase the application rate. Essentially, we have a glorified septic system right now. If we were to provide some treatments, and that's where I thought this technology might help us monitor that treatment equipment and help pay for some of those costs, because anytime we stick anything in the works, it's going to slow stuff down, and it takes a lot more effort to monitor and maintain. So if we can utilize some new technologies to do the monitoring and possibly some of the maintenance, it would help us reduce our operation costs on exploring with a new treatment system.
okay. I do believe, Alan, we are using a lot less water or effluents, sewage, but it's so much stronger. We can't get more allocation, correct? Because it's
Correct. The state uses not only the strength of the wastewater, but the wastewater flow to determine how much excess capacity you have. And every year they recalculate it based on the last year's data. And we've always been in that 1,000 to 1,500 gallons per day of excess capacity, if you want to call it that. So we're right on the line.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion to submit a letter of collaboration?
I'll do that.
Is-
I'll support the proposal.
I'll second
Second,
it.
Joel is second. Any other discussion?
There's a draft of the letter online at the tail end of that email thread. If you have
Okay.
a chance to look at it.
All those in favor say aye, raise your hand, whatever. Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you.
Moving
Kristen.
on.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Thanks,
Kristen.
everybody.
Good night, Kristen.
See ya.
Bristol Village Waterline Engineering Study Update, Green Mountain Engineering. Alan, you got the floor.
Michelle, real quick, who seconded that last one?
Joel.
I did.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm here to speak about the preliminary engineering report that we're actively working on for replacement of all the circa 1905 cast iron water lines in the village of Bristol. We're probably at a 60% stage of the report right now in the study. I wish we'd be a little bit further along at this point, but December sort of set us back. We are currently working on and calibrating the hydraulic model of the system. And that's a computer model that will tell us whether the pipes that are in the ground right now are properly sized. And we'll use that information to feed into street-by-street cost estimates for upgrading individual water lines on a project basis. So, as well as prioritizing various projects for upgrades. So right now, you know, we all seem to think and know that Pine Street is the #1 priority of the town. It is for several reasons, not just the age of the water line, but the condition of the road itself. Let's say, for example, that our fire flow analysis tells us that the 8-inch pipe that we plan to put down there isn't large enough. We'd have to put a 10 or a 12. I don't think that's going to be the case on Pine Street, but I just wanted to use that as an example. That would impact the cost estimate they're going to prepare for Pine Street directly, and we would need to update that Pine Street estimate. So that's just one street. Every street in the village is going to be looked at the same way. We'll be looking at various alternatives of grouping streets together to come up with project sizes that are reasonable for the town of Bristol to take on an annual basis. We'll present those projects in that report on a ranked basis. So like I say, we're about 60%. We've used, what we're using to calibrate the data and the model is actual fire flow testing that VTUMS had done as part of your ISO study for the fire department. So that's real-time data that we're using to calibrate the hydraulic model on the computer. So that's where we are right now. My goal is to have it finished by the end of January, and that is just time to prepare funding applications to the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which are due February 25th. And of course, if you have a completed preliminary engineering report, you get ranked higher on that priority funding. So that is still the goal, and we're working hard on it.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Alan. Any questions for Alan?
I have one question. It's related, but it's different. Speaking of the priority lists, are we up to date on our submissions for being on the priority list for wastewater and water projects? Isn't there a January deadline?
No, it's February 25th. This year,
Okay.
both are due at the same time. So we've got a month or so to get those completed for this year and update those. And that's what this PER will help us to complete those.
Was it January last year?
I believe it may have been the end of January. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Alan.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on. Stony Hill Business Park Infrastructure Plan Review and Approval. Green Mountain Engineering et al. So who's going to start with this one?
Well, I'm just going to offer some introductory comments that
Okay.
Folks may be aware, maybe not be aware, that this project has been on the town's mind for more than 20 years. When the town first purchased or received the properties from the state, and then made arrangements to sell the properties to private landowners. In 2015-ish, the town collaborated with Stony Hill Properties to do through a CDBG planning grant to do a conceptual plan for a business park on this property behind the fire station. And I think Jamie has an image that he can show from that conceptual plan to show, at that time anyway, what people were thinking it might look like. But I'm not seeing Jamie. Did we lose Jamie?
No, Jamie's there.
I'm not
But he's
seeing-
muted. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
There he is. Yeah.
Hit your space bar, Jamie. There he goes.
We are. So yeah, I can share that site plan that was done back in 2016, if we can all see that. And this was the rendered site plan that the Cushman Design Group had done in collaboration with GME, which shows, essentially the same plan as what we're moving ahead with some slight variations and changes. Initially there was a residential component here, and of course that, based on the town regulations and zoning and things like that, was been changed slightly, and you'll see those. Well, it's already been permitted and approved, but you've seen those changes take place in this region here. And then moving down Firehouse Drive, this is where the business park was rendered and initially planned. And you can see, it hasn't changed dramatically. We still got 3 buildings that are going to be for industrial/commercial use. And one thing that may have changed slightly is Stony Hill Properties has acquired this parcel, which we were able to do some testing and move this septic capacity into this area, which ultimately helped us significantly because through some work with and investigations with the Vermont District Historic Preservation, the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation, a lot of this southern area down in this region has been off limits due to some archaeologically sensitive findings. So it's changed a little, but overall the concept as a whole has pretty much remained the same.
Yes, and following up on that, a couple of years ago, the town of Bristol received a up to $500,000 grant through the Northern Border Regional Commission to pay for the infrastructure to serve this business park going from West Street into the park. And the premise behind the grant is to lower the construction cost so that when it's all said and done, it can be competitive in the marketplace. Otherwise, the cost of construction is just prohibitive. And so not only is that a deterrent from people making the investment to build, but also a deterrent from people being able to afford the rent or to purchase the properties to locate here. So the idea is that the grant will help reduce the costs for the buildings and the grounds. And as a requirement of that grant, the town will need to own the infrastructure, the roadway, the sidewalks, the stormwater, whatever is in the right of way. So part of what you're going to see tonight is the layout, this new layout. A lot of work has gone into laying this out over quite a bit of time, a lot of iterations to make it work. And you'll see where the infrastructure is laid out and a proposed right of way. And with that, I will turn it over to Jamie, and he can introduce the design team if you'd like, but also I'll just turn it over to Jamie and take it away.
Sure. Yeah, like Valerie said, a lot of work has gone into this. We have Kevin Harper and David Blittersdorf and Terry White and Cushman Design Group, both Milford Cushman as well as Michael Perpall. We've all worked a lot of hours trying to make this plan come together, and hopefully when I share this, we can see what that now looks like. And hold on one second. And can everyone see this? This is essentially what you're looking at is the existing conditions site plan. So this is the business park parcel back behind the fire station. This is the new fire station right here. And this is out behind the Nelson property, which Stony Hill Properties acquired. And as you'll see in the next slide, this is that residential portion that had been reviewed and approved previously. And this is essentially the conceptual layout of the business park. As you can see, we still have 3 significant buildings of decent size, ranging from 21,600 to 25,640,000 square feet. And I think the purpose for that, Kevin might be able to explain better, but essentially it's There's been a lot of businesses that have started in the town of Bristol and have grown and have seen their growth to the point where they can no longer remain in Bristol because there's not adequate space. Kevin, did you want to say a little bit about that at all?
Thank you. I could say a lot about it, but there's a lot of history there, and I think most people know it. My company, Autumn Harp, ended up moving eventually after some 19 years in Bristol, right when we were growing rapidly and had great benefits, et cetera, provided when I sold it 75 full-time jobs, but when the buyer of the company sold it 9 years later, there were over 125 employees. Again, full benefits, et cetera, close to home. And David, why don't you drop in here and just and talk about your story? I mean, there are so many similar stories, and the vision here that Stony Hill had from the get-go, and frankly, the town had back, isn't it over 20 years ago now, Valerie? I think you alluded to
Yes.
that the town bought this land from the state with the idea in mind of developing, the next place for businesses to grow. And it's sadly taken this long to get here. But David has a great story that I think is worth mentioning that's current. David, can you jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I was just reminiscing. I only met Kevin about 10 years ago when I hired Joyce, who's a longtime employee that was with Autumn Harp from almost day one, I believe.
Yeah.
And then Joyce connected us, and Joyce is still working for me. But the story that I have is I graduated from UVM in '81, and I was working part-time down in Middletown Springs, and my girlfriend at the time, we decided to move to Bristol and rented Mike Burke's house at 44 North Street because she was still going to UVM and I was traveling all the way past West Rutland every day. And in 1982, I quit that job, my part-time job, and started NRG Systems full-time in the house there. So we had trailer trucks bringing tube in so I could make wind measurement towers, and it was the start of my whole business. It's kind of crazy, running out of a home occupation. But I started NRG there. We had to move out about 3 years later because, I couldn't end up having these trailer trucks show up in the yard there and trying to unload it. And I was looking for space to move in Bristol, couldn't find any, so I ended up in Charlotte and then ended up in Heinsberg. Same story, you're hearing that, I wanted to stay in Bristol. I really couldn't to move. But here we are all these years later. I ended up selling NRG, built the buildings there, selling it to my now ex-wife. And All Earth is now looking to really come back to my roots because I used to go and make copies of my instruction manuals sort of one at a time at the drugstore downtown. I was paying, 50 cents or $1 a page or whatever it was. It's like ride my bike down. And I just love Bristol. And so here we are again. I'm an investor with Kevin and Bristol Works and doing Stony Hill and wanted to bring our business back. And the COVID pandemic crisis really showed what we could do by moving outside of Burlington, because I have a fair number of employees that are in the Burlington area, but almost all the professional staff in my company is working remotely. So we're designing the building to be very few offices. The core manufacturing people will work there, which we can grow from local employment. We're going to be the lead building and kick off this whole development. So really proud to come back to Bristol and be part of the town again.
Yeah, I think that'll be the first time that we've come full circle with any of the many companies we've lost. So just Jamie, you can come back to you, but building A there, and this, yeah, thank you, is the footprint of the building that we've been working on with Naylor and Breen, Terry White's team, and Cushman Design Group, who did a lot of work over at Bristol Works, but also did the Firehouse. So we've got our team back, and we have, a great business that wants to come to town, and we need to build a building for them. So this is the whole idea, and it's pretty exciting to see it come to fruition. So back to you, Jamie. This is really an infrastructure conversation, and I guess the hope is that the board will see that we have a plan, and we have a first in who will buy this piece of property that building A is on, and then the other two buildings could be rental units or built to suit and own, or those two buildings are fantasy in the sense that we don't know what shape or size they'll be necessarily, but we do know it could be at least that large in those footprints based on the archaeological limitations, stormwater, wastewater, road access, loading docks, grades, and all the rest. By the way, there's a huge chunk of wild wilderness that would be left open, I guess, down in the southern end of the property, and the southwest in particular is super sensitive. And there's such a cool archaeological story to tell too for this project, that, and the trail system makes a loop around. Maybe you can just, there it is. And Porter's been amazing to work with, and we want to celebrate that loop, and we want to talk about and educate with signage and such the archaeological unique characteristics of the property as well. So I think that's back to you, Jamie.
Sure. So with that said, what you're looking at right here is more or less a conceptual site plan. The yellow shaded portion represents essentially the town's right-of-way, and as well as some easements on some of the infrastructure that is proposed. So this would be the portion that would essentially be responsible, if you will, by the town for maintenance and upkeep. What you'll notice, I'll zoom in a little bit, this right-of-way portion right here is narrower than the proposed portion on the business park. One reason for that is because these two pieces are already permitted and have their designated right-of-way on their respective site plans. It might be possible, however, in a potential future rework of this area, as well as the town owning this parcel, it might be possible to widen this right-of-way to match this width. But if not, we'll make it work with what we have left for infrastructure to pass through this right-of-way. But I just wanted to make that notification to everybody who's looking at this site plan at what you're actually looking at.
Jamie, can you bring it up a little, get a little closer into the commercial component so that folks can see what Green Mountain's been, planning, thinking, designing in terms of stormwater in particular, I would think, and what is planned for septic?
Yes, certainly. So I have several site plans that I plan to just go through, which each showing their respective component.
Okay.
So again, this one is relative, just showing everything in relation to itself. For example, the parking lots, the building sizes, the infrastructure is primarily located within these easement areas. There's a few pieces that are outside that, which will discuss in another plan. But just wanted to have everyone have an overall look at what we're planning to do from, up above anyway. And with that, actually, I wanted to just throw in a quick visualization that Cushman did for this site plan, the proposed plan. They have rendered an aerial view, which I'd like to share with all of you right now. And let's see if I can do that. So let's see.
Amy, before you go off that, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you're putting in the first building, I'm assuming that, first of all, I'm assuming all that stormwater won't change even if you put the other two. That's the stormwater for the whole complex. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you're going to put the entire road into the last one, or you're only going to put that up to where you need to put it for the first building?
So I think in order to have the most effect with the grant, primarily most of the infrastructure will need to be installed.
Okay.
There will be possibly some of this pavement that may not be installed if we meet the goals, to spend the $500,000 essentially.
Yeah, actually, we have to spend $1 million.
Well, $1 million, correct.
Right, because it's a 50% grant.
So these areas may not be installed right away if we meet that goal. And it's going to be more of a phased approach with the buildings. David is going to be constructing building A as soon as he can. Building B and building C would actually probably be constructed at a later time when the tenants are defined.
Okay.
So let me quickly just show you those renderings from Cushman Design Group, if I can figure out how to do this. I'm going to stop sharing this one. I'm going to share a new one, which is going to be this. So this is an aerial bird's eye view, if you will, looking from the west. And out here would be West Street. This is the river winding around. This would be Firehouse Drive. The new firehouse is just off the page. But essentially, this would be David's building A. And these are the two fantasy buildings, B and C.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
I can.
Notice the solar arrays on top of the buildings.
Lots of solar. I'm sure we know someone who can provide that.
Yeah, our building is going to be 100% solar powered with a roof array. Actually, the panels will be almost flat or 10 degrees and not like 45 degrees. So they won't stick up as much. You won't see them. So, but at least the artist wants you to see them.
Yeah.
And you can see the first two cottages rendered to the far left of the housing complex. And again, Jamie, you can just draw a circle around the hiking trail that, well, yeah, just around the campus there. It goes right around the very perimeter, just between the housing complex and the parking lots for building A and B, around and all the way out to the southern point, which you can't quite see here, but it's a gorgeous peak there that'll be wooded. All the archaeologically sensitive areas, there's a couple acres, I think, right in there that'll be untouched. We're not allowed to, pull stumps. We can cut a tree, but we can't pull the stump out of the ground because most of what they found was within 12, 16 inches or thereabouts. So it's going to be beautiful, a beautiful public space for people to enjoy, among them the people that are working here. And how cool would it be if there were people living next door, and walking to work and dealing with fewer cars and less pollution, et cetera, et cetera. So the hope was this would be something that I think that visually speaking, that most of our you know, our local folks can understand and appreciate the location and the orientation with its surroundings.
And then I'd also like to share the other view that was rendered to help visualize this site. This is actually looking from Firehouse Drive, essentially at the property line of the business park, looking due south. So this would be David's building A, as shown on the site plan. This would be the building B and building C. And so this depicts really, you know, the main road coming in. This is what you would see as far as the scenery and landscaping. He's done a great job of really illustrating, you know, what visually you could expect pulling into this new business park. So I wanted to share that with all of you. And then going back to my other site plan set, let's see, that is here. So again, this is the conceptual plan. Come on, PDF.
Jamie, Tasha's asking how many parking spaces will there be for the industrial area?
So as you can note on the site plan, we have a total parking stalls, including any future parking that we've shown on the site plan, of 152. And we have 6 accessible stalls. And then we've shown, which I'll zoom back out, we have 32 future parking stalls, which some of them are located within that archaeologically sensitive area. So they would only be a last resort if needed, if the use of the new buildings required it. And I could show, here is a portion of future parking if David's business or the building C warrants additional parking. And then that's 17 spaces. And then in this area, which is that archaeologically sensitive zone, that is 15 spaces. So a total of 32. And I would also note that building B, obviously we don't know who that user will be yet and what that use will be. This parking lot could technically be considered future parking as well. So this could remain as green space until parking is needed and then installed afterward, should the use warrant that parking. So that would be another 25 spaces that wouldn't necessarily may need to be constructed right away, but could be and has space for and has been planned for.
Jamie, I'd just like to add a comment because I've been driving the team crazy on parking spaces. I don't believe, and everybody should be driving cars. We work really hard for carpooling, alternative ways to get to work between biking and transit. And when I was at NRG, we helped get that bus out of Middlebury going to Burlington. When I was there, we subsidized the purchase of the bus because we wanted people to ride the bus instead of driving cars. So I've spent a lot of years saying we don't want to encourage people to drive cars by themselves. So I am minimizing my parking for a reason, and we have done really well with my staff. My staff emits half the carbon of a normal Vermonter because they have incentives not to drive. If they do drive, they drive efficient vehicles. But I just want to make the point that I'm not encouraging tons of parking. So that's why there's an alternative for expansion at our building, but we're not going to build it right away.
And Jamie, maybe you can explain from the archaeologist's perspective what we'd have to do to apply some of this particular, I mean, in that sensitive area, what it'd require that geogrid, if you might explain that.
Yeah, so in this region here, within that archaeological buffer, the State Historic Preservation Officer, Scott Dillon, has essentially allowed us to conceptualize parking here. What that would entail is removing trees, but like Kevin said, not removing the stumps. And then you would have to lay filter fabric down over the stumps that remain and then build up on the existing grade, not to impede or alter the actual existing surface. So you wouldn't disturb any of the artifacts that would remain in that buffer zone. And then on top of your subbase, you would then have to apply a geogrid surface, for a finished surface that would be pervious and therefore would not require any stormwater implications, and relatively remain undisturbed within this buffer zone. You'll see from grading plan that I'll go over, there is a significant grade increase here. So it's not a desirable location for parking by any means, but again, it is possible to implement if needed.
Thank
So
you.
with that said, I'll move on to the next piece of infrastructure, which is come on, PDF, the water plan. And so as you probably recall, there is an existing water main that runs from the West Street line that was recently replaced, runs down Firehouse Drive and turns and has a T connection right where my cursor is, and then continues along a pathway that goes around the business park site. And you can see it's identified within this easement. It's a 20-foot wide permanent easement. And this water line continues down eventually to the Woodland Apartments development on Lover's Lane. So with that in place already, we planned for that previously and plan to extend from this existing T and valve setup. Sorry for the slow reaction time of the PDF. But you can see there's two valves for isolation and control. There's a cap right now, right on this existing line. We'll remove that cap and continue the new water main and extending that right down the main drive, going by all the buildings, branching off with service lines to each building, and then terminating in a green area with a fire hydrant, and as well as the service line to building C. So this layout is helpful in the sense that it's just under the 500-foot requirement for the state of Vermont as far as a construction permit is required. So because we're under that threshold, we will not need to apply for that permit because that would be time consuming based on turnaround times from the state that we've seen recently. So that was beneficial that we were able to remain under that threshold. What else you're looking at here, again, with the yellow easement area, this is what the town would assume as a maintenance responsibility. You'll see the sewer system, the sewer collection system is essentially a straight trunk. This is the main. We have service manholes for both service lines of the building, dumping into this manhole number 2, coming down, discharging to manhole number 1, continuing straight through into a pump station set up down here. Service lines would not be the responsibility of the town, but the main line and manholes would be the responsibility of the town. Once it's entered into the pump station, as you can see by the yellow shading, this would not be the responsibility of the town. It would be the owners association, whether that be 3 owners separately or or 2, perhaps, if it's just David and the remaining tenants. But it would be their responsibility to maintain and operate that pump station. That discharges through a force main, which, like I said before, we were able to utilize this acreage on this parcel with amazing soils. It's very conducive to the wastewater disposal. So that was beneficial to have that. And like I said, that opened up a little more space on the main site due to those archaeological restrictions. As you can see, this is a significant chunk of the parcel that was removed from use. So let me zoom out a little bit more. And as far as I remember, the building A is going to be sprinklered. That's correct, right, David? You still there? There is.
Yeah.
Megan has said yes.
It would be.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that is, and I'm pretty sure building B and building C probably will be required, but the use will determine that. So moving ahead, more infrastructure. This is the stormwater component. So what you're seeing here is the trunk lines for all the stormwater collection system, manholes, 2 different routes before it enters into the stormwater pond. And it's actually a infiltration basin. So the plan is to infiltrate all the storm runoff into the ground because of such great soils that you have. So that is essentially what the plan is. I'll zoom in, at least I'll try to show in general what you're looking at. So these catch basin, oh yeah, way ahead, yep. So these catch basin structures are typical precast concrete underground catch basin structures. They're not dry wells. They'll essentially capture the runoff coming from impervious pavement areas and deliver it and convey it through the piping system and network to that stormwater infiltration basin. I'm going to try and slowly back out. But as you can see, it's a well laid out system, and what we can show on the next site plan is the grading plan. Come on, computer. This is the residential portion. Okay, give it a second. So this layout, this site plan shows the required grading for drainage. You'll note that the buildings are not all set at the same elevations. There will be some differentiation there, which I think is depicted in the rendering that was shared earlier. Again, we talked about this archaeologically sensitive area, and that because we can't do anything with this surface, and this area actually plans to be cut down quite a bit. And by quite a bit, I mean about 9 feet of cut of that soil. That's amazing soil. We had to implement, probably if the future parking is constructed, a retaining wall to maintain the surface, the existing surface here. So that is what this grading plan really shows, is that this surface is slightly built up, this surface is cut down, retaining wall between, and then the grade change up to that point. I would like to note here that each building does have its own truck access and loading dock, and these are designed currently to be tucked under a covered roof area where the actual loading point is. So that's beneficial. And David's building A loading dock is right in this location. Truck access would come in, turn into the building, turn around, and then back right into the loading dock in this area. Truck access for building B would come down straight and then could back right into their loading dock. And truck access for building C would come down, turn into this turnaround location and back into its loading dock. This area also serves as emergency vehicle turnaround points as well. And the road, it's hard to see, but the road actually continues to a point here. So a vehicle could come in, turn, and pull out.
There's also at the ends of the parking lots and the end of the roadway, a space to push snow, so we're not hauling snow out of there with dump trucks and bucket loaders and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. And snow could be pushed off this bank as well.
Yeah.
We've tucked all of our components close to the building, so snow could just be pushed off this way. And again, off the back side of this as well, snow could be piled.
So is that it?
With that, yeah, I mean, I could elaborate a little more on the stormwater if there was interest, but you can see with the grading plan, 4-bay, where there's some pre-treatment done to the stormwater runoff, and then that spills over into the infiltration basin, which is this right here. And then
Jamie, isn't that the same infiltration basin that's the sort of the overflow for the firehouse?
So it is kind of. Right now, let me try to pan to it. This is the infiltration basin for the fire station. There's an emergency spillway, if it were ever to be flooded, that actually discharges right to this location here.
That's right, yeah.
And in this sense, it's kind of the same design where we are planning to infiltrate the 100-year storm without any troubles. However, should there be a 500-year storm, there is a spillway set to be right here, where over a elevation of 7 foot deep, it would then spill over and then run into this. There's like a little valley. It's hard to see, but the contours show it. There's a valley that runs around and then kind of goes toward the ditch for Vermont 116.
Yeah.
But these are all excellent soils and water would never make it there.
Hey, Brett, have you ever seen any water in your infiltration pond there?
Oh, you're
During training exercises.
There you go.
Yeah,
when we're flowing water, that's when we have
Right,
put water up the top of the bank.
right. But that's collecting all the water from your parking lots and your rooftop and everything impervious.
Never seen it happen.
Yeah, I've been driving Jamie and the engineers crazy because being an engineer and said, well, you're on a gravel pit. You're never going to collect water anywhere.
Yeah.
But we have to meet those state regulations and their design regulations, so that's what we do.
Yeah.
So
Jamie,
that essentially, go ahead.
I just want to step back a little bit. I think in our design meetings, I don't believe we've talked much about, if anything, about the septic, the town involvement with the sewer system, the stormwater certainly, but I think when we get a better handle on what the cost estimates are expected to be and where we are with the threshold of total expenses for the basic infrastructure, can you elaborate a little bit more about the thinking about the septic?
So right now, the septic is set
The
to
town's
be.
involvement.
Oh, go ahead.
The town's involvement.
So right now, the septic system, it would make sense because it's required for the development in order to serve the development. It would make sense that it would be incorporated into the grant as far as construction costs, however, not maintenance costs. And right now, as you know, as you can see, and let me switch back to a different plan, which is the sewer plan. You can see that there are several disposal trenches up in here with a force main that connects down to the pump station. And again, this doesn't happen without the wastewater disposal capacity. So it would make sense that it would be part of the grant to be constructed if we need that additional money spent.
Right. I think it's safe to say that until we get a handle on the cost estimates, I mean, it could very well be that all the other stuff really consumes the grant funding.
Right.
Well, Kevin and I are going to be putting in all the sewer lines anyways to the pump station, and we're going to put all this in under the infrastructure part of this whole thing. So even if it goes beyond $1 million, it's just going to get put in, and we want to lay all those sewer lines when you're laying everything else under the roads. So that's the time we're going to do it.
Right. Absolutely. And in fact, I think it's worth mentioning that well, how do I put this? This still needs to go through a permit process, and the permitting process might result in some tweaks here and there and some adjustments. But in terms of the final decision of what the town ends up actually being responsible for, I mean, it's good to see the big picture, but when things are further along through the permit process and cost estimating, I think we'll be able to have a clearer sense of what the town will actually be completely committed to, and being involved in the sewer lines might not be necessary.
Right.
We don't need. In other words, we
our-
don't necessarily need to make that decision tonight. We don't need to make those commitments tonight.
And it's the hope, Stony Hill's hope that, that it certainly makes sense to do it all at the same time and
Oh, absolutely.
gets paid for, who ends, understand that as we said earlier, the $500,000 isn't real until Stony Hill spent at least another $500,000, and the original estimates were something like 1.2 million for this whole project. So, septic is a touchy subject, and we started our meeting tonight on septic, understanding septic, and we understand that it's not something the town wants to be responsible for. And so these designs reflect that understanding from previous, conversations we've had with the select board that, again, stormwater is a little different, but septic, not so much. So we're doing our best to stay away from it. We've carved it out from, in fact, that's why that land along 116 up the hill came, we went to Nelson's and asked them if they had an interest in selling it so that we could see that as the ultimate, because there's no access to it. It's otherwise not a very useful piece of property, but from the get-go, we saw it as the out for septic challenges, and it frees the town up from even having to think about it.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to add is that, putting this disposal field over here and keeping it away from the buildings itself benefits everyone, of course, too. But it also, being as linear as it is, I could fit approximately 4,500 gallons of capacity. And that essentially translates to a little over 300 employees potentially that this system could serve. So that's really great news if these end up being office buildings with, several employees in them. We have the capacity to serve them.
I mean, if you take Bristol Works, 48,000 square feet, this is quite likely a good bit more than that. There's over 100 full-time employees over there and have been for years. So this could be a huge, this could be 150, it could be 200, but to have the capacity for up to 300 is pretty awesome. Because who knows who these next two tenants are going to be, but if they're manufacturing, and I mean, our little bakery, wholesale bakery over Bristol works in 15,000 square feet, has 45 employees now.
Wow.
So a 30,000 square foot building in manufacturing, actually making stuff with your hands and machines, could easily be 100. When Autumn Harp left, as I said earlier, when Autumn Harp left, they were over 100. Just, so this was the hope, that we'd have a place to move our entrepreneurs to something where they could stay put for another 10, 20, 25 years. And there are so many, so I'd love to hear from select board members. So you've listened, you've endured a lot of conversation here. How's everybody, what are folks' reactions?
Jamie, I have two questions, and one of them may be for Alan. I saw in your the water plan that it said ductile iron. Alan, I thought we weren't putting in ductile iron anymore, or we were hoping not to.
So that was the section from West Street to the cap, if you will, that was at the property boundary of the business park.
No, but it said ductile iron from that point all the way back, or at least that's what I read.
Right. Let me share that plan with you again, and we can take a look at that. Let's see, that's this one. And so I'll go to the water plan, which is this one right here. And so this portion right along here, from essentially this property boundary to West Street, is ductile iron, just that segment. This portion all around the business park down to Woodlands, that's all C900 PVC. And West Street itself is also PVC. And the reason that happened was this was done prior to these two projects, or this project. And so this was done with ductile iron. And I'm not sure why we chose to do that. I wasn't actually the designer on that particular project, but it was done in the ground prior to these two, so that's why it does not match.
I think the answer is that we've expanded. It used to be the town only wanted ductile iron pipe in the ground, and over the years we've come to be more familiar and more comfortable with both PVC and HDPE, and I think the line down. Maybe the line on Mountain Street Extension was the first HDPE because that was directionally drilled. So we've sort of changed our tune in terms of what we will allow and accept in the village water system.
Hey, Jamie, is it HDPE you're putting in or PVC? I didn't hear you right.
So for the water line, this section here is all C900 PVC. And the new water line would likely be well, I had shown it as ductile iron, and maybe that's what Michelle's talking about.
Yes, that's what I was talking about.
But
yeah,
we change easily to C900 PVC. We can adapt that to the ductile iron that's there very easily.
I hate to be the environmentalist, but I hate PVC. I use HDPE. We did it at NRG everywhere.
You can look into options.
Yeah. We pulled 1,000 feet of 8-inch water line directly buried or pulled through to the wastewater. Actually, wastewater was different, but that was a water line. I love that stuff. It's a lot better for the environment.
Yeah, and we can use different materials. The important part is the actual diameter, and we want to make sure that we have adequate supply to each of the buildings and fire protection on the hydrant at the very end.
Yep.
So Jamie, my second question, it relates to what Valerie was talking about with the sewer, because you were talking about the sewer line and the manholes in the right of way for the town here. So that's what I was trying to understand the responsibility of, or what the thinking is, the responsibility of the town. So once that's in, if something should happen to that sewer line, then you're saying then that will be the town's responsibility to replace, take care of, maintain?
Correct.
We should meet the other side of that, Michelle, is we should meet the $1 million threshold fire before we get there. It's there in case they need it for that $1 million threshold.
Mhm.
The other thing
Right.
is the C900 PVC. The reason that's in the ground on West Street and down over the hill is because we couldn't dictate, because it was FDA money that we used to build that water line. We weren't allowed to tell them what they could use and what they couldn't use as long as it met the spec.
That's correct. USDA Rural Development funded that project.
Any
We also
any
talked-
questions or comments? Oh, go ahead, Val, sorry.
During the design meetings, we also talked about the stormwater network and the piping outside of the right of way. There would be a maintenance agreement, including the catch base, the infiltration basin. So I think, as I understood it, there would be a maintenance agreement with the homeowners association.
Yes, and not only that, but when we do the
Oh,
250 permitting and the stormwater permitting, they're going to require us to put together a stormwater maintenance plan. And that plan will be referenced in many different locations, but more importantly, it'll dictate who the responsible party is, what they need to do, and how often they need to do it. So that'll really kind of outline the scope for any agreements between the town and the association, the owners association. This right-of-way area or easement area is more or less just so that the town has the ability to maintain access to it if they ever needed to maintain that, or if someone else needed to maintain that. It's not necessarily David's property, if you will.
Joel, go ahead. I have a question from Bruce, but Joel, go ahead and ask your question.
Jamie, up there in front of building A, there says 14 spots.
Try and move up.
Parking
Parking.
in front of the building,
Says-
Jamie.
Put your cursor up that bump out right there in that right where the says that 8-inch ductile iron coming from B.
I see the
Talking about the parking spaces, Jamie.
These parking spaces in front of building A and the last parking spot to the north. What is the width of that road between that bump out and then the east side of the road?
So that right there, that is a 20-foot width, maybe 24. I have to double check. I think it might be 24.
Okay. We say the road is what? Going to be a street wide, 40 feet wide.
Yes. So I
Street's only as wide as your narrowest point.
right.
Seems
So-
narrow there. Could 2 tractor trailers meet there, one leaving and one coming in?
Yes. Yes, they can.
I think where you're getting confused, Joel, is the yellow is right away and not necessarily part
The road.
road width.
Okay. Because the water line is almost on the edge of that. I call it a buffer zone there, that little green spot. Yeah, right in there. I was just wondering so it's 24 feet between there and that bump out.
Right there. Correct.
Okay.
And the same applies here where it necks down right there, because
Okay.
it's actually parallel parking on street, but the real road width is right along this portion here. That's the true 24-foot road width, and that is maintained here as well as between the parking spots and the road here, and also this width down here. These are all wider than the 20-foot minimum.
Okay.
Anything else, Joel?
Nope.
Okay, Bruce asks, what parking will be available between the fire department and housing development across Firehouse Drive?
So right now, as part of the permitted residential portion, I believe there are 10 spots that are parallel parking right here along the eastern side of Firehouse Drive. And then as part of the business park proposal, we are adding an additional 9 spots on the western side of Firehouse Drive.
Now, again, those are up for grabs. The idea was we wanted to meet the zoning requirements for parking spaces, but also wanted them to be as versatile. I mean, that might be where folks park to go on the trails if they have to drive here to get on the trail. Or it could be for it's a weekend and somebody in Cottage A is having a barbecue. There's a place to put the guests when they show up, you know. So flexible parking is key, and on-road parking we felt fit sort of Bristol's theme in the downtown area. You know, there's people park on the street in many places, and it just brings the scale of things down a little bit. So it was, yeah, I mean, we hope that a lot of this parking is over the top. And that's why we're not going to build any more than we have to as the needs arise. But this, I almost think of, I don't know, it feels to me more like public parking than, you know, commercial parking.
It'll be more used when there are events at the fire
Right.
station.
At the fire station, at the residential areas, yeah.
So if the town maintains this, it becomes a town road, then it would all be subject to our winter parking ban, I'm assuming. Okay. Jessica asks, how many residential sites are planned across from the fire station? You know that yet, Kevin? Or what it's permitted for?
It's permitted for 15 units, most of which are 2-bedroom.
Are they all single family or are they duplexes?
There's 2 duplexes, 3 single-story cottages on the eastern edge there, on the southeast corner, and there are 4 connected row houses that are 2-story.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question, and a comment. One, I was a business owner, small manufacturing business owner 20 plus years ago when we approached the town about moving into Bristol, and we were told, oh, there's a business park coming. Well, that business, but I'm really glad that this is happening. So there's that. I'm excited to see this. And my question is the timeline. Can you talk to me a little bit about what the proposed timeline is for this project?
Who are you asking?
Anyone who can answer, Kevin.
Well, the hope is we'll get, and maybe Terry White here from Naylor and Breen, if he's still on the screen, may want to answer that, or Alan or Jamie. But the hope is we get to permit shortly, as in early February, and submit our permit applications and get our bid process going and start in the spring and summer. And the hope is that we'd have the infrastructure done fall and David's building up and ready for occupancy before the snow flies.
Great.
Well, actually, my deadline for moving in is August of 2022. So we'll start construction later this year, but we're going to be in there, a year and a half from now, because I got a lease that's up and I got to move.
Yeah.
Whether it's done or not, David's coming.
All right. We put some portable heaters in there. He's been through this once already. He can do it again. At least he has a place to park his trucks. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Kevin.
Kevin or Jamie, Jamie, can you go back up to the housing across from the fire station?
Ben.
I know we're at the corner where it says hydrant. There's a hydrant right there in the corner by the fire station in the back corner.
Right
Is
here.
there gonna be a hydrant in that, what is it called? Something Drive? Is there gonna be one in between the townhouses and the cottages in that area, somewhere in there? Is there gonna be a hydrant?
So I don't believe we've planned a hydrant in this development because there's one that's right here that could service all of these buildings.
Yeah, this is Alan. I think, I'm pretty sure we reviewed that with Brett back in the day, and when that design was being put together, and just the proximity of those, they're not that far off Firehouse Drive, and felt it wasn't necessary at the time.
So I think the answer to your question, Joel, is no.
Yeah,
Nope.
no, thank you. I just was questioning whether
Yep.
those being that close and having to cross a street with traffic and stuff, those always have to factor in when you want to hook up to a hydrant.
Right.
Good point. Good point.
Any other questions? See anybody jumping on board?
I'd be interested to hear from select board members if there are any red flags or concerns that we should be aware of from your perspectives.
Well, I think Picker said it earlier about the $1 million or our 500,000. I know it was before Darla got on, and I think it was maybe before Ian got on, we discussed this about owning sewer systems, owning a sewer line that's not on our property. And I think we had some real concern about that. You know, I could see where the money could go if we have enough money to go and put it in part of the infrastructure. But once we got it, we'll sell it to you for $1, and the rest of the maintenance is on you for the rest of your life.
And I think that might be a possibility, you know, where
Yeah.
you have an agreement for a 3-year or a 2-year, even a 1-year, you know, warranty period, and then it's over.
But no, I know this has been
Or maintenance agreements.
it's been too long to come, and David, I'm going to want to come to see that new building in August.
I'll let you
Hopefully
use-
by
I'll-
2022, we can all get in there.
Yeah.
And I'll even let you use the bathroom.
And it won't be a porta potty outside, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But we'll all have to walk there, right, Dave?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're darn right.
Or an electric bike. I'm big into electric bikes, so.
You made a good
it's one
point
of
there,
those.
David, about driving a car. When it's this close to the village, I mean, I see teachers walking to work, walking to schools, and the elementary school, and people, right here. Kevin knows where I live on by Autumn Harps, the old place.
Right.
I used to watch them
Yep.
walk to work there. So this is
Yep.
nice. They can walk from the village and not have to walk down on 116 to go to work. They can walk right.
Yeah, with the 15 or more units of housing right there, plus where the village is, it's all walkable. I want to see people walk. And just one other aside, I wish the damn railroad bed was still there. I want to put a train in the Bristol from New Haven.
We're hoping he's going to live long enough to see that.
Yeah.
List. But when he's got the train, we just need to reestablish the track through everybody's backyard, I guess.
Good
Yeah,
luck.
we'll have to do it at night when they aren't looking.
Yeah, I guess my last comment, speaking of pedestrians, I would just like to say that, the developers and the owners were very respectful and concerned about the trail system that's there. It's heavily used. People love it. And so it was a definite priority on their part to make sure that this trail, maintains around the entire business loop and is going to remain as a beautiful hiking path.
Yeah, there could be along the western edge. I think we thought that, Porter, are you on board still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There could be a section of it that needs to get pulled in or, pushed one way or another a few feet along I think I'd call it the northwest corner-ish. Is that right, Jamie? Am I right, or is it just?
Yeah, so what you can see, the smaller dashed line represents the existing trail network that's there now.
Can you blow it up just a tad?
I sure can. Hope my
Thank you.
computer allows me.
Yep.
Give it a second, it's doing its own thing. Come on. So this smaller dashed line represents where the existing trail is. And as you can see, that hovers pretty closely to building A and may interfere with operations there. So we pulled that around to stay within the water line easement that's already been developed. You know, a nice walking path along this on a gentle slope. And then we wrapped that around, trying to maintain some distance from building A, but still stay high enough up on the hillside so that you get the glorious views that you'll see to that western edge.
Jamie,
And just as you point of, as a business owner in the building of owning building A, I don't mind having the trail close to the building. I want it high up on the hill to stay as close as we can, because I'm not paranoid that somebody's going to be walking through our building. But we got to keep it pretty high. You don't want to be down too low.
And from the trails perspective, we are perfectly happy to move it wherever works best. We're super grateful to have been able to use that property for the last couple of years, and are grateful, you know, Kevin, for your leadership and enthusiasm and support all along. And when we put this trail in, you know, a couple of years ago, our total agreement was, once you find out what your infrastructure looks like, we'll make any changes we need to so that everything can coexist. So it's all good.
We're psyched. We're psyched to be part of it. It's a really great thing. So thank you for all your great work.
So just my thought, where this trail is located currently, with the proposed location, is only because with snow removal, I'm imagining a big pile of snow right here. I would not want to see the trail developed, you know, through this portion and then be covered over by a large snow pile in the winter, with people then have to walk around anyway. So might be
Jamie, you could put some benches put the trail over along the retaining pond, put some benches there, and they can sit along in the evening, you sit along the dry pond.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Well, I think
Hey.
this looks really fantastic, and I'd like to congratulate Kevin and his team on this project, and just the amount of time that it's taken to sort of come to fruition. Speaking from sort of Bristol core and the business perspective, you know, it's really has been a long time coming to be able to allow businesses to sort of grow into Bristol. So many have moved away over time, and, you know, we fought for years to try to keep business here. And, you know, my hope is that this finally enables Bristol town to do that, to keep businesses. They can grow and be able to move to a space that they can grow into and get bigger and bigger, and not move away and not go to a nearby town. But I think it looks fantastic. And so I congratulate you for all the hard work over years and years and years, and the fact that you've kept with it. It's an admirable thing to do, to keep moving and working on this and to finally make it happen.
Thank you, Ian.
Great job.
Thank you.
Anything else for
I
anybody?
just want to add briefly that Eric Coda had reviewed an earlier version of the plan, and it hasn't changed from what he had reviewed. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was okay with what's proposed. We didn't talk septic, but their stuff was good.
Great.
Okay. All right. Super. Thank you, guys.
All right.
So is it safe to say that the select board supports the plan going forward through the permit process? And then once we get through the other side of all that and we get the costs, and then we can really figure out what the town is going to ultimately be responsible for.
I think that's fair to say.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Beaker, Joel,
Yes. Good on my
you're all on board? Okay,
Thank you so much.
great.
All right. See
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Have a good
thank you.
night.
You guys.
Good night.
Thanks,
Hey.
everybody.
Good night. Thanks, David.
Good night.
moving on. Public Works Police Building Site Needs Analysis, Subsurface Investigation Follow-up, and whether to proceed with Phase 1 Site Assessment.
So just very quickly, the design team recommends that we proceed with a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and I would concur. I think it would be wise for the town to have a better idea of what's low ground there and what kind of environmental concerns we might need to be aware of. From my experience, it would be about a $5,000 expense, but we wouldn't know that until it's actually put out to bid.
Yeah, I'd like to know if we decided to add on to the existing building and go to the west, if we would be required to mitigate everything there, or if we could just do what was in the building footprint. I think that if we could just do what was in the building footprint, it would be cost effective to stay there. If we have to remove everything, then I don't believe it would be cost effective to stay there. I just think that, you know, that the $400,000 or $600,000 is a lot of money, but if we only have to do what's in the footprint of the building using the existing building, I think we would probably be all right.
Does the Phase 1 get us that information?
Not necessarily. It has more to do with, as I mentioned before, it's more like a desktop analysis, studying historical records and other available information to gain some insight into what potential hazards might be there. And it would be, whoever is doing it would then make a recommendation about whether further investigation is warranted. Now, depending on what we do, if we end up seeking certain loans or grants, quite likely the funding agencies would expect to have a phase 1 environmental assessment done.
Okay.
And what happens if they find something?
If we're not disturbing the ground, then we're not obligated to do anything. But if we have any desire to disturb the ground for anything, then I would think we would want to know.
I always worry about things like this because it's like, okay, once you find something, does the state then come in and say, okay, we now know that you have this and therefore you need to clean it up, even if you aren't doing something. That's always my concern. When you get your knowledge can be dangerous in some respects.
Right, and when you think you're talking about a landfill, who knows what we're going to come up with?
There
I mean, but
also be funding sources to deal with it.
Right, that's true. And the state knows that it's a landfill and it's a closed landfill.
Mhm.
So you're hoping there's not too many surprises hiding down there.
Well, it's not down there. It's up on top of the hill where we want to build.
Oh, right.
I mean, don't have any idea. I don't personally have any idea what's hid there. I don't ever remember it being a hole up top.
And
But
actually part of a phase 1 environmental assessment is that whoever's hired would interview people who know the area. And so that would help shed some light on what may or may not be below the ground.
I don't know. I just, there's part of me that says, are we throwing good money away for bad? Or, I just don't know.
I would like what we're going to have to mitigate. I mean, if we want to add on to the existing building, we only have to mitigate where we're working. I would think that could be cost effective, but if we've got to mitigate the whole site, then I'm with you, Michelle. I don't want to open that door.
Right. I mean, and if you're talking just adding on to the existing building, then that means you're talking about not putting a police station there.
Well, yeah. I mean,
right.
I'm looking at our options and I talked some with Chris as to where everything would be permitted. We're limited. We're limited as to the places that we can put the two of them together anyway. I just, people are used to it being there, which is we won't have the problems with neighbors that we might have trying to move. I mean, if we try to go into a residential neighborhood somewhere, I can see that being problematic.
So if the phase one doesn't answer what Pico's looking for, what does? Is it a deeper and more expensive study, or is it a completely different environmental study?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
The Breadloaf folks would have a better handle.
My guess is if the phase one doesn't come up with anything, if we decided to pursue it, they would have to do a more in-depth study, and that may come up with something,
Right.
which is then also going to cost more money.
Right.
Because isn't there a phase two, Val?
If
Yeah.
warranted.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's going to be warranted.
Well,
Right.
Just knowing what's down there, what's been down there, that
Yeah,
I also-
well, not knowing how much material was taken out and what was put back in fill is the scary part. Obviously, in that back corner of the existing old village barn, there's 23 feet of fill there according to the borings, and 19 feet over on the other corner.
Right.
And I think that's if we're going to be into that for $600,000, if we have to take it, if we go looking and we have to take it all out, we're going to be into it for that money regardless.
right.
I guess what I'm saying is I would like to know what we have to remove if we disturb it. Can it just be the area we disturb? And I don't know who can answer that question for us. Can it just be the area we disturb? Once we disturb it, do we have to do the whole thing?
yeah, I don't have a solid answer for that. My impression would be that only the area that's disturbed would have to be dealt with. That I don't think regulators or anybody else wants to do things unnecessarily.
Because at that point, I believe that if we just did the footprint of the building and they were concerned about paving, we don't need to pave the apron coming into the building. So we don't need to disturb that. And commercial construction, you're 5 feet, your excavation's 5 feet to begin with. So you're already almost halfway there to that 13 foot on that one corner, which seemed to be, they were under the impression that it was getting less as we headed east.
I mean, part of that too is sort of driven by, which is similar to what Joel talked about last week, which is studying that area and seeing if it's actually viable, since it's sort of reducing the scope of what Breadloaf has so far put together. And so I guess we'd have to decide if that's an area we want to study. Like, are we reducing the size and changing these buildings and working off, I guess, where the green building is now, and just updating that, versus looking at other sites in around the town to see if there are potentials there as well. It's almost like we have to do both of those things to get an answer that we need.
So are you guys, I think I'm following this, but are you saying that we want to kind of ditch the design and just add on to what we have? Or it
Well,
seems to me if we're going to do this, we want to do it right.
They pitched the idea of renovating the green building and putting on 3 deeper bays. I mean, he overlaid the drawing, or maybe
Right.
he was taking the whole building out
Mhm.
and doing all new. But at one point he overlaid the drawings and he showed 3 bays to the west of what was there and rehabbing the old building.
Mhm.
Right.
And then
Jill-
getting rid of the second building completely?
Right, everything else,
Mhm.
yes.
Right, and that was all based on just the quality of the land that it was sitting on. We had that discussion, and it was sort of the more that we looked at it, given that their borings had been so much deeper in the materials they found, Joel sort of posed that question, like, okay, how much of the green building footprint and additional around it could we use to revamp and update what we have currently? And so after all that, my concern was sort of like, how much are we then moving away from what Breadloaf has already done, and how much do we lose? Is it something where it's like it's now 50% of what the project was? Obviously that's cheaper, but then we're not really getting what we really want, or do we just have to rethink what is needed and what we want?
I think they were under the impression we could still get what we wanted by switching gears, but that would be, I'm not 100% sure of that, Ian. I don't want to put words in it. I know they weren't willing to say what would have to be taken out once we opened up the ground last week. So, I mean, I don't know I don't know if it's A&R we have to talk to get that answer, or who.
So going back to Val's question, so the environmental study, like, do we want to do that in the hopes that maybe this answers some of those questions? Or do we want to find a particular entity that's going to tell us the answer to Peaker's question?
So Val, can we put that question to Breadloaf? Like, if we do the phase 1 and nothing comes of it, then what's the next step? If it comes up with something, then we also need to know what the next step would be. My guess is they're going to require a phase 2 exploration. Because then at least we know if we're going to put the $5,000 into it and they come up with nothing and they say, okay, then we're good to go, then it might be worth moving forward.
Shall we continue this to either the next meeting or one in February and have Jim Pulver join the conversation and answer the questions directly?
Well, he wasn't able to answer how much would have to come out last meeting, so I think we need to look at that answer somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think you're... Go ahead, Peaker.
I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I don't think that if 13 feet is the deep end, it's quite an expense, but it's still way cheaper than relocating. Mm-hmm. If it's just one corner that has to be completely cleaned out and built back up.
Well, we don't know that though for sure because they couldn't get to that other boring site.
That is correct. I mean, they may get, there is quite a hole behind that other building, so it could be all filled back there.
Peter, did you give any more thought in terms of from last week's, in terms of locating somewhere else? Like you talked a little bit about sort of running into perhaps more issues in terms of residential. Do you think it's worth looking around and seeing what's available? I mean, you mentioned you talked to Chris too, in terms of what's zonable or what we can do within our zoned areas.
Yeah, and there's a spot on Plank Road, but I don't believe it. He wasn't 100% sure if it was in the old village area. And if that was the case, I can tell you, knowing the lay of the land, that if it's not in the old village area, it drops off, and you wouldn't be able to put the structure there that they're talking about if you couldn't do it in the old village area. And if it's not in the old village area, you can't incorporate the police building with it. The other place he thought would meet the criteria was Lover's Lane, but there again, you're out of the district.
Is it the district only for the police station, or is it for the public works
police
as well?
Station. No, just the police station.
All right, so we'd have to look at areas as well as both separating those buildings to accommodate for the district.
Yes.
Okay.
And Peaker, we've kind of, and Joel can answer this too, the spot that we were initially talking about, the fire station, is no longer really a viable place for the police station.
It's parking is the only issue there. I mean, I think the spot is still viable. I just think you're already pressed for space. If anything's going on there, pressed for space, and getting that additional parking is probably going to be a problem.
Okay.
I think there's room for the building.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to park inside all the time.
Mm.
I mean, that's seeing how it's being used and seeing how when everybody shows up, how much room there is or lack thereof. And I'm a little nervous if we get a development in there and, we have firefighter parking on one side of the building for the firefighters. And then we have other parking in the back that we allow. We get people who park there now to walk the trails.
Right.
Um,
Well,
and I
they'll
know-
have to parallel park.
Well, yeah, but what if I already see a parking issue there.
Mhm.
And it sounds like we're going to have plenty of parking spaces when we first start out, but who knows if you put in, 15 and the businesses take off and have a ton of employees that don't walk.
Well, hopefully they have enough parking spaces on their building for those cars.
Yeah. I
And they seem
believe
to.
it will, but that takes up space for somebody who wants to hike the trails or space
Yep.
for, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to look all the way around.
Yeah, and once that goes in, people are going to be drawn to that location. Right now, it's the fire station, and it's already well used. Put in 3 large buildings there, 3 hopefully successful businesses as well as housing, and you have the trail network, and it's encouraged to sort of use those lands. You're going to get more people there. It's which is good.
Yeah, it's all good. It just, the idea when there was nothing there, the idea was great. With that, and then the more it gets developed, the tougher it becomes to keep the traffic flow.
Yeah.
So back to the site assessment.
Hey, this is Sharon.
Gotcha.
I just want to make a comment here. I have had some experience with the environmental, and what I would do if I was in your position would be ask Jim who they use for an environmental engineer. There are companies that's all they do is phase 1, phase 2s, and find out exactly what the process is and what it could tell you. Because Breadloaf, as Jim as an architect, and I worked there a million years ago, I think he started just before I left. They don't do the environmental stuff.
Right.
They can talk about it, but there are actually companies that's all they do. So they can give you a better idea of how long it would take, how much it would cost, what you might have to do, what you might not have to do. So I'd ask him for his recommendations.
I've hired companies to do, once before. I put it out to bid and it's usually an engineering company that will do it. Or at least those are the types of folks that responded, or some historic preservation type of folks. Historic preservation, I don't know, it's been a while.
I don't think there'll be any historic preservation.
No.
The historic toilet, maybe.
Primarily
There
engineering.
are probably some great antiques down there.
Is there a number that we want to set, or is there a number in anyone's mind of how much is this? This is how much money we're going to spend before we, or this is as much as we're willing to spend sussing out this site. I feel a little bit like we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole with our existing site. And I just wonder how far down the road is too far to turn around and do anything else, or when do we pull the plug on a project like this? Is there a number that you've used in other projects, or is this just so odd and unique that we can't do that? It's new to me, so I'm asking you more experienced folks.
Well, it isn't exactly what I expected. I had no idea that I knew there was fill there, but I had no idea. I was ready to throw in the towel last week and just go somewhere else. But the more I think about it, if there's a way to work with that spot, I don't have a number that I'm comfortable with. but I do know that, we own that, and that's worth something. And it's, we're gonna, the other side of that is anywhere we go, we don't own any other parcel of land that would accommodate this building. So anywhere else we go, we're gonna be taking land off the tax rolls.
Mhm.
Don't everybody jump at once.
We don't have to make a decision tonight. Right?
Well, I think,
Under any deadlines. Everything's self-imposed.
Go ahead, Joel.
I think we need to kind of go back to like 5 years ago. And yeah, I had my heart set on 32 North Street, build a new fire station. And we did an assessment of that and we played that out. And I'm glad today, I'm glad we built over where we are. But I don't think if we'd have said to the voters, now we're not even going to try North Street, we're just going over and spend $3 million on West Street, I think it would have not passed the first time. I think we did our due diligence for North Street and it didn't fly. And I think we need to at least do our due diligence. If the voters say to us, no, we didn't give Pine Street a try for a new town barn, we're going to go somewhere else and spend $2 million between building and buying land.
No, I agree, Joel. I guess I was just looking for how.
I'm looking for a number in my head and I don't have that either.
Yeah. Okay. I guess not even beyond a number. I guess my question is how far is the line? You know what I mean? Like even in what and how many is it? So we're talking about 1 or 2 assessments here. Is what's beyond that? Like how far is it before we've gone so far that we can't turn back if we change our mind? You know what I mean? So
yeah, how much money do you want to soak in before you cut your ties?
Yeah.
I think
and how far in the process of it is it before you say, okay, we're 3/4 of the way there, let's build the building. We're 3/4 of the way there now, and it's not going to work out. I want to do I want to do the research and I want the information, Joel. I 100% agree, but I guess I don't know how much information is enough information. I guess you've got more experience with that than I do.
I guess what I would like to see Breadloaf do is stake out a building that the size they showed us, and not talking police, just fire or just public works, starting in the east line with the zoning setbacks, and tell me where that northwest corner is, and that's where it got into around between 9 and 13 feet deep. And we own an excavator in the spring. We dig down there with their people on site and say, boy, we're running into garbage another 30 feet back towards the east. At least to me, and that would at least say, or we say, you know what, we hit something and it's going away within the next 12, 15 feet going east, and we think we can do something here. And then we could do a site assessment, and I don't mind doing one in tandem with that, because as Valerie says, we don't know whether, I like Peter's idea, if we added on to the footprint that's there. I'm not sure if I want to add on to the building, but do we need to do a site assessment on 4,900 square feet that we already own over there, that's sitting there? If we put another 49 or 5,000 to it, do we only have to assess the $5,000, the 5,000 square feet that's now just earth and not a building over the top of it? Or are we exempt because there's a building there that's over 40 years old? I don't know that.
I don't know. I think the minute you mess with that building, you're probably going to subject ourselves, but I don't know that either.
There could be a little bit of design change. I don't know if Peter was leaning that way with, if you reshell that whole building, that green building, let's just say the green building. I think the old village barn needs to just go away.
Everything,
do something.
everything,
too deep.
everything east of the west of the green building needs to go.
Well, I think you need part of that green building and some of the west of it to build another 5 square. But could you have them redesign it where the 3 longer trucks are in towards the west and the shorter trucks are in the east part?
Well, that was a suggestion that he made. Put 3 new bays off of the west end of the green building,
right?
And rehab the green building,
right? And
that's where I said, if we end up, that would take us out to about that 13-foot mark, and that's not undoable. I mean, you heard them tonight. They're talking of cutting the site over there for that 26,000 square foot building, 9 feet. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, I think that would be at least lookable. Look at that situation and see if that could be worked out. And
Well, I also know that they
that
said
green
that,
building is a brand new floor in it. And from the floor up, basically.
well, I know Jim said that when he overlaid the new building where the green building barn was, that some things would have to change because you couldn't drive in through the back. They had the garage doors so you could drive in through the back bay. So some of that stuff would have to change anyway if you put it on that spot. But, so
And there's still the. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say there's still the issue. So I'm looking at the plan now and the overlay. The new building that replaces the gray garage is like twice the size. It's almost 10,000 square feet. And overlaying that on top of the green garage, it's easily double that size. And their recommendation, you're still doing the geopiers underneath where the green garage is, which would have been the police station. So there's still a lot that still needs to be done. And so I guess would we ask them to just say, okay, take that 10,000 square foot footprint of the new building and just put it where the green garage is and we're looking at that kind of site, or are we doing something where it's a complete redesign saying, hey, work with the green garage and then add on to up to this distance, these dimensions around it, because that's another revision for them to have to do, but maybe that's the only thing we can do because of the way the site is.
Let me just step back and let me make a suggestion. I think what we need to find out from Red Loaf is from Jim is to find out who we can talk to first, because I think even if they overlay or put the building where the green building is, he already said they're going to have to do a site assessment.
Right.
So let's find out what that site assessment would entail, what the cost would be, and what that's going to tell us. If they find something, what it means. If they don't find something, what does it mean? Because talking about doing all this means nothing if the site assessment says there's all these environmental hazards and
right.
We're going to have to remediate it, and it's going to cost us $100,000 or whatever.
Right.
And then go from there once we get those answers.
Or more. I mean, they're already suggesting 400,000 or 600,000.
Well, right.
I mean, that was for the entire site. So if we're scaling down, you're still going to have probably some percentage of that we're going to need to do. And then that's the number, Darla. When you start to look at that, are you paying an extra 400,000 to keep it where it is, or are you, only paying 100,000 to buy a piece of land? Which, yes, it does take it off the grand list, but you save the taxpayer $300,000 or perhaps more by moving somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So
does that make sense?
But I think you're right, Michelle. I think we don't know enough about the site and the area that we're sort of focusing on now, the green garage area. We don't know enough about that to make a decision yet, of even to study that. So that needs to be studied more, I think.
Speaker Joel?
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be studied more. I think the green building has stood there for 40, 50 years. I don't see it going anywhere.
No.
A little nervous about if you do tear it down. I do know and put a new one there are going to be issues. I just trying to mitigate the amount of fill that needs to be taken out and put in, and the amount of. I'm not really in favor of the pier system, but if that's what ends up happening, then that's what ends up happening.
The pier or their other suggestions, like they had 3 options. So yes, whatever we feel, would be the system. And you're right. I mean, if the building has solid bones to it, then a renovation of that and with an addition at the same time, there's no harm in doing it that way too, versus a whole new structure.
Right.
Joel?
I think you got to do our due diligence over there, at least do a site assessment on. I'd like to know, do you do the whole top of the bank that's not going to even be touched? It's just drive on, or just the extra 5,000 square feet of building if we're going to build to the east or west of the present building. I'd like to see that.
Well,
You know, and
the only problem. Mhm.
and I'll go back to just tell you a little quick story and some history. I can remember Bristol Rescue moved off from Fitch Avenue, and they were going to go over where the old Village Barn was on West Pleasant Street. That was 2.5 years, all the way to the Supreme Court, and I testified. I served on the committee with them, and you know where they are now. They didn't move over on West Pleasant Street. It's not as easy. Everybody's your friend when you're fire or public works department or rescue until you want to be their neighbor. And then I don't want that. I don't want to hear those trucks in the middle of the night backing out and this and that. Going somewhere else isn't going to be cheap. Isn't going to be cheap.
Isn't going to be
easy either. Either way, Peter, but it's not going to be easy. Just sure, well, come on over. The neighbor's going to love us.
The only problem, Joel, with what you're talking about is, with just the building footprint. If we're doing any kind of construction, you're always outside the building footprint. So I think they usually look at the construction area, just not your building footprint. So I don't know.
I'm worried more about when I say the building footprint, how much have we got to dig out the old crop soil?
Right.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
The speaker said if the maximum is 13 feet on that back corner and it starts sliding towards the east and goes up to 6 or 7 within a few feet, I could be bought into that. But if it's 13 feet for the whole site, all the way to the east line, we got to rethink that.
Yeah. So the phase
Eric?
one, I think that if I understand Valerie right, the phase one assessment's going to do the whole site because it's more or less, like she said, they're going to interview people to see what's there and then decide from there what needs to be done. So, I mean, I guess I would like to know what that's going to cost. I mean, somebody ought to be able to give us a rough idea, unless you're comfortable with that $5,000, Valerie.
I can dig more into it and find out.
I mean, that's $5,000 I'm okay with. If it was going to be, 10 or 15, I'd have to rethink.
Right. Yeah.
So Eric, you've been on this listening. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Whatever works. Where the green building is, there's no fill out behind it.
Meaning it's just natural
Yeah.
Natural fill?
Yep.
You've dug around there. Where do you think the fill starts going to the west?
It starts about halfway across from the dog pound to the village barn. And about, basically straight from the dog pound back towards the bank is where that's all fill.
So where they had their, I don't remember which borehole it was that said they got down to 13 feet.
That's the one by the dog pound.
Yeah.
And then the one by the village barn, that's probably where you got your 23 feet or whatever it was. And then they did another bore on the other side of the village barn. Right. That was probably deeper.
Just one, Eric, was the one west of the village barn, right close where you parked the old abandoned cars used to be. I think that's 23.
Yeah, that was probably the deepest, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So who said they dug up mattresses when they dug the hole for the scale house?
Mike. He actually said he dug out old cars out of that with the excavator.
When the pit for the scales?
Yeah, for the pit for the scales. So there's some garbage. I don't know if you call it garbage or what, but there's some type of material under there all the way through there, probably.
Refuge.
Yeah. Refuge. There you go.
Okay. So are we good with Val getting us some more information and then we can move on from there about a site assessment and cost and what it's going to tell us?
Yeah.
I believe so. I think we need to fully vet we need to fully vet the site. It wouldn't hurt to have in the back of our minds other places that zoning would work. I mean, it wouldn't hurt us to be looking in that direction at the same time, but I don't think we should jump just yet.
Okay. All right. Okay. We ready to move on? Okay. Budget
Do you-
workshops.
Does
Oh,
Val
sorry.
have
Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Does Val have what she needs from us to move forward?
I think so, and if I have questions, I'll circle back.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Budgets. Let's see. Who's sharing? Who's talking? Who's?
Jen is co-host and can share her screen.
All right, there you go.
What's your pleasure, folks?
I made 2 notes on line. What line was that? Hang on. Well, now I lost it. Brilliant. Oh, here we go. 133, 134 to switch those back to what they were.
Where are you, Leanne?
133, 134. It's the Conservation Commission and the Energy Committee. I was asking, like, can we have those be the same? I talked to the chairs about that, and so Conservation Commission would like to keep that at 350, and they'll be better at charging what they have been spending to the town, and then let's knock down that Energy Committee to 100 as well, since they haven't been using it, and it sort of balances that out. Wait.
134, Jen.
Below.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, let me catch up here. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, go down one more. There we go. There's 100. And that's saved as nothing. So that's, there you go.
Good job.
I am
Jen-
working on the electricity thing, which should hopefully save us 4,000. The whole idea of the Bristol solar field, and I'm trying to get a handle on how we're going to manage that, because essentially we get all of our, or a lot of our electrical accounts are sort of credited, and that's what we use to pay Green Lantern Solar. But in theory, we should be saving 4,000 a year. And so that should come out of electrical line items for certain departments, like the fire department, that their electricity, we should be able to get a percentage of that 4,000 and have it come out of that because it's crediting that account. But I'm not sure how we do that. Like, the idea is to save $4,000, but it's a little complicated on actually how to implement that in the budget.
It's funny you asked those questions, Ian, because I had a comment about the street light saying, "Isn't this part of our Green Mountain Solar?" I was like,
it can't. No, it can't be. It's we get a special rate for streetlights, and so that can't be added to the list.
Okay. Jen, I had a question about the general telephone. You know, we increased that to 5,300. Was that was because we added the list? We're adding the listers' phones in there.
Yeah,
and we put all the phone costs under the general line and not individual departments.
Yep. That's exactly right. We took it out of the listing and out of the clerk budget and put it into the general, so that the Holly Hall phone for downstairs town office would just go to the general. So it makes it look inflated in the general, but
But it's
budget,
all
it
departments.
decreases in the others. So.
Okay, all right.
So how are we looking? Do we have a percentage increase yet? Can that be calculated, or we need to add our appropriations in, right?
I don't know if. Do you consider the percentage increase with the appropriations or without?
Well, that's the overall taxes with them. And our capital funds too, we need to nail down.
That's a separate tax rate, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, it's the percentage is the total at the end.
I guess I was just thinking that because we vote on the general fund separately from the capital funds, that you have a general fund increase and a capital fund increase. But I could be wrong. I don't.
No, it's a total tax increase.
Okay.
Well,
we don't
you're both right. When you get all said and done, you'll say this year's tax rate is going up, blah, 2% or 1%, and or your overall spending, whether it's coming out of the appropriations or out of the capital or what, this all comes out of the back wallet.
Yeah,
out of a checkbook. So,
Jen, if I can share my screen briefly, just to show something.
And while she's sharing her screen, the admin assistant line, that's part Sharon and part Gail. Is that correct?
Yep. Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, Jen, if you could unshare for a moment.
She did.
I did.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry. I have too many screens open. Let's see if this works. Okay. No, that didn't work. Hang on. Stop sharing. Let's try this again. Share screen. Oh, trying to find it. No, that's not it. It's frustrating. Let me try it one more time before I bail. Okay, there it is. So I plugged in the numbers from these spreadsheets into the one that we've been using for a while. That does kind of summarize these things. And so currently, my numbers are a little bit different in some instances, just because my cells were pointed to certain personnel figures. So I didn't change those, but it's not that far from what that are the other spreadsheets that we were working with. But you can see, assuming everything is accurate, that these are the percentage increases. Operating fund, and this reflects no raises. So this is the personnel taking it on the chin. So that's what it looks like. Public Works is taking a dip. I'm having trouble figuring these numbers out though, because one of these just doesn't make sense, and I'm trying to figure out why. But
Valerie, can I ask? You said go up a little bit further where it said 2.1 for Public Works.
Negative 1.
Negative 2.1. Yeah.
Right.
And
so overall 3.1.
Why is that different than that's about almost 1% higher than what we thought about giving if we were going to give a raise?
Now, this is a difference. This is a percentage of change, Joel.
Right. But
what do we cut?
So what did we cut more? Because we were thought about 1.3. So what did we cut beyond the 1.3 to get it to 2.1? That's my question.
These numbers reflect 0. There's no 1.3 in there. There's 0.
We understand that, but where did how did the total go down if, where did that 2% come from?
Right.
Something's got to be wrong because there isn't anything in that department that went down that I know of. We added to some stuff.
I added some culvert or some, I thought we added some guardrails and.
I think it was the indebtedness.
Mm-hmm.
Indebtedness dropped quite a bit.
Because we did we paid off South Street Bridge.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So total expenditures is actually minus 1.3. Then the amount supported by taxes make minus 2.1.
Yeah.
So it's nothing really to do with the day-to-day operation of public works.
Right.
No, because it's 185,000 going up to 188, but our overall is 815 goes down to 804 because of the South Street Bridge.
Right.
That big chunk of money comes out, and that's why.
So over the bottom line overall is 1.3% increase for public works, all totaled.
I see. Okay. Interesting.
So
according to your thing, it looks like it's an overall 3.5% increase for all the budgets.
correct. Right. The net supported by tax.
Does that include our appropriations or not?
Yeah, I did. I just mirrored everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Now. So I think in executive session, I think we're going to be revisiting the question of compensation. So,
Valerie, the general fund is $20,000 different. Is that based on what I look on my, like when I totaled it, I had 969 and you had 949.
I went through and I double checked everything. Let's see.
Hey, Eric, are you still on?
Yes.
Yep.
I know you're probably going off to bed, so I'll ask now. I see you got some of the sidewalks sanded. Are you going to get some more done tomorrow or get the rest of them?
Yep.
Okay. And then new village truck come in yet? Or the new district truck or whatever we want to call it, the new truck come in yet?
No, not yet. I called Greg today, left a message. He hasn't called me back yet. So I'm going to call Keith tomorrow and find out how it's going. Monday was 2 weeks since I talked to Greg before, and he said the truck should be done in 2 weeks. So technically it should have been done yesterday. And then it's got to go back to Clark's to get inspected, cleaned up. They do they go through the whole truck, check it all over. And so Dan from Clark said they'll have it for probably a day or so, and then we can get it. So if everything goes the way Greg says, we should have it by the end of this week.
Okay. I see you had the old one out. That's why I knew you didn't want to run it. So, okay.
No, I had to run it there this Saturday and Sunday with a storm. We haven't been using it only when we have to.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Okay. So are we going back to the general fund? Do people have questions on that? Or can we move on to the next one?
We got one more week before we approve this thing for print, right?
Yep.
I don't know the rest of you do, but I want to know what the total increase of going to be on the grand list, or what's the total increase?
We won't know that. We don't know that until April anyway.
Well, based on last year's grand list, which was last year's budget, what would be the
total increase on taxes, Joel, not the increase on it.
Okay, what's the increase on the taxes? That's what I want to know.
Right. I think that's what Valerie was.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. It's funny that earlier the numbers jived. So I don't want to fool around with it with all you guys hanging out. So
Hey, Jen, can I ask a question? On the highway department under equipment, it says contracted rep. What is that?
Contracted repairs, perhaps?
Is that what it is? Contractor repairs, okay, for 10 grand?
Yeah, I think that's,
Repairs.
yeah.
Okay. I was trying to figure out what it meant.
Oh, yeah, it probably just didn't take all the characters.
It didn't, but it was fine. I think you abbreviated. I just wanted to ask. And then in the recreation, the one that was online, I know you moved the 16,000, those three lines up.
I removed it again today, but
Okay.
I don't know why it didn't take last time, but
I was
it
gonna
is-
say, we watched
it
you
is
move
for spending and it is for appropriations, so.
Okay.
So it's all fixed now, but thank you.
Okay, so where are we next? Recreation? Does anyone have any questions on those? You want Jen to put it up?
You want me to keep, yeah, sorry, do you want me to share again, or are you guys?
Yeah, you go
Select
ahead.
board? Go ahead and put it. Go ahead, Jen.
Yes,
We'll
please.
just go through them real quick.
All right, recreation. Just tell me if you want me to, and I can slowly work my way through it unless you have specific questions.
This is pretty much level funded other than what the state increases are for, or the increases are for workers' comp and insurance and stuff like that, correct?
I don't know if these, Valerie, did you update these pay?
Hey,
They budgeted the COLA.
Oh,
So I don't know if these
update
numbers
those
got
figures,
changed.
but I can tell you what they are.
Okay.
So the salary would be 62,984. And the FICA and retirement would be 4,881.
Insurance fine, and retirement would be the same, right?
Right.
I thought she said 4,801.
4,881. 4,881.
Okay.
And then down at the youth center, it would be 56,860. 4,407 for the FICA and 4,407 for the retirement.
Well, no, it's only not a big deal, only $28. But the youth center labor was the same last year and this year, but why wasn't the rec department labor was off by $28? I just
Because these figures represent the actual adjustments from July versus what was budgeted.
okay.
Anybody have any questions on this budget?
No.
Okay. It's the next one.
Did highway, or do you want to go to highway again?
Public Works, yeah. Do you guys want to look at the Public Works?
Good.
Might as well throw it up there, Jen.
You know, that salary is about $400 less under salaries. Budgeted to proposed.
Just all about actuals. Right? Because I assume she took everybody's actual pay rate
Right.
that was issued.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yep. If I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down.
Well, you know what's really sad is when I grab my mouse and I try to move it.
Oh, sorry. I'm not going fast enough for Michelle.
No, it wasn't that when I was looking for something earlier. Like, why isn't this moving? Any questions from anybody? Okay, now, please. Questions? Okay, appropriations.
Change over because it's on a different screen. So this is, we just leveled everything for capital. So I guess that would be.
Is that the appropriations tab on the bottom, or is that different, Jen?
So you guys just leveled everything last week.
Mhm.
So
Wait, Jen, we can't see what you're seeing.
You can't see what I'm seeing?
We're seeing
No.
the police department's
Well,
budget.
what is going on here?
Gremlins.
Isn't it the tab at the bottom next to police?
Well, that for some reason
Oh,
that
but you're on a
I'm
different page now.
I'm gonna change it up here. Now can you
Oh,
see?
there we go.
Yes,
Yeah,
now we can.
that was weird. So, okay.
The library number, was that what they gave you? They finally give you a number? Because I didn't think last week we were sure what the number was. Is the 148 accurate?
It is. The same as
144.
last year. Yeah, the same as last year.
Okay.
So why is it so, Jen, I'm in the document that you shared, the XLS file that's on the SharePoint. And in the appropriations tab that I'm looking at, which appears to be the same as yours, none of those are filled in. And yet you can see one that is filled in. So why can't I see that if you're in the same document?
Because it won't let me open my one from online through my treasurer email on my computer. And I'm probably sure it's because I have a Mac. And for some reason, those numbers didn't get updated from last week in the online version because I went back through and I thought I had done that. But apparently I didn't.
Jen, is there a reason why the cemetery fund line 13 is not filled in?
Because you all opted not to put an appropriation in there?
That's the new capital fund,
Yeah.
Joel.
Right.
Yeah.
The one that we did with undesignated funds last year that we opened.
Okay. Because we started a cemetery fund to fix them. I thought that was, we were going to do the fencing and things.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what that is. But I think we decided not to fill that this particular time to try to save.
Okay.
And also, I know that Val, you've talked about a little bit of tweaking for these other ones too, right?
Well, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, like just to see if you want to reevaluate any of them.
Mhm.
Not change at all. Capital Roads comes to mind as one that needs some extra help. But where that comes from, I don't know.
So Jen, how come there isn't money in the 4th of July committee?
Because they have their money from this year that they didn't use.
No, but they requested it still.
I think we didn't know that last week.
Yeah.
Right?
No, we got it. Yeah, we got it since last week.
Right. So it wasn't in there. That's why.
So they have their money from last year, but they want another 6,000 for this year?
I think they just
Yeah, so they can do a bang up job next year and do whatever.
have the option to
Yeah.
have money instead of not have any.
Okay.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but
I mean, do we have say because it's a? I thought it.
I don't think we have a say.
Yeah, they got their letter in.
Right.
Why is it, so Cecil had sent along that Cabot report, town report. I was looking at that just to get ideas to how to improve our town report. And all the appropriations are voted on by the select board. And I noticed that one of them, and I don't know if it's different in Cabot than it is here, one group asked for this amount and the select board said it was going to be zero. And I was curious. And so that's why, is it something that how is that possible? I've
It's
never
gotta
known
be
that
their
we,
policy. It's gotta be their
Oh, okay.
policy.
so they're able to,
I don't see how they can because statute says if they petition,
yeah, I know.
Unless they're chartered different, right? Could their charter?
Yeah, I think if they're chartered different, they can do different things.
I mean, most they'd agreed upon.
Charter.
It just there happened to be one that wasn't funded, and I was just curious about that. And maybe it was something where the group didn't ask for that amount. Perhaps that was it, but it stuck out. But okay, so they're going to ask. I mean, they're going to. My only issue is that the likelihood of them being able to use the money for this year is slim. So are they going to ask again for the following year?
Yeah, we also
they'd have-
don't know if they used any of the 6,000 from last year for
Right.
setting up stuff and then they couldn't do it.
Right. And I kind of like to see, at least from entities that are in our town, I'd like to see budgets and reports and profit and loss for the money that's spent. I think that would be a useful tool. The residents, voters are paying out this money, and I think people, some departments or some organizations give the budget, which I think is great, and others are never listed in the town report, and so it'd be nice to see that. And I'm not picking on them. We're just talking about that, but it's like a lot of organizations don't seem to have budgets readily available.
Jen, is there anybody who's not taking their appropriation this year?
Like the Bristol band didn't take their appropriation.
Well, that was very nice of them.
And then the after school program, Sharon said,
That's because they're no longer around.
right. And then I think that's really it. I think it's really just that people want to keep the money in there to have the option to take it. So my understanding about the 4th of July committee is that they didn't want to need the $6,000 and then not be able to have the $6,000, but that they would be responsible to say, we don't need it. Like basically what we've told people is that it's a lot easier to hold your place and ask for the money, and then they can write us a letter saying we don't need the money, and then we don't have to disperse it. It doesn't help the tax rate, but we can't issue them any money if they don't ask for it, is the predicament that we get put in.
And are they worried about if they don't take the money the following year, they're going to have to start over again?
We already decided that wasn't the case.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, Sharon talked to Ted and it sounded like they might use the money to put on a bigger, better shindig this year, assuming it's possible. I don't know. But as she said, we don't know what they had to pay out in deposits or anything for last year, even though they had to cancel. Like, did they have to pay a deposit to?
well, supposedly they met with us. When they met with us, they told us that everybody was understanding of the situation, but he didn't say whether they had to pay anything.
Oh, okay.
Because he said the fireworks they could cancel right up till like the week before, and there were a couple others that they said they could cancel, and everybody was understanding. But that doesn't mean that they didn't pay a deposit.
Right. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea.
And also too, if the statute says we don't have or can't have an opinion on this, then we don't have an opinion on this. They ask for it, and the voters decide by Australian ballot if they're going to get it this year, or if any of these organizations will get it. It's going to be completely different. It'll be interesting to see.
Right.
Okay. Any thoughts on the town appropriations?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be more helpful to like with Val's sheet that she put up in terms of that percentage, and then we can figure out what we're going to be slashing. And also we have the personnel to look at as well, and make a final decision on that. For me, it's nice to see, and I think maybe for all of us, it's nice to see that percentage because it gives us a guide and obviously what we want, what we're comfortable with, and what we want to work towards. Looking at other news articles about budgets going through, some towns, took big percentages out of a lot of their departments to sort of reach certain things. So I don't know if we want to look at that or discuss that. It's a difficult thing to do, but having that percentage really helps. At least here, when it's just these numbers, it's hard for me to sort of see the bigger picture in terms of how everything's coming together.
Right. Would it make sense to go back to departments and say, you need to take, just for argument's sake, 3.5% out of your budget? Where do you see that happening? Because I think it's hard for us to know where that can be absorbed sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Joel.
I guess part of that is, we saw the highway was already down 2.1.
Right.
And then what if somebody else is up over, let's say somebody is 2% higher, let's say general administration, or, that's 2%. So to ask them both to go down 3.5.
Well, no, I'm just putting that.
I see what you're saying there. Can everybody level fund their budget? What would a level fund budget look like?
Yeah.
And most departments have. Most departments have, and some are below. Part of it is just, which also another thing I'd love to in these sheets, Jen, if you're able to highlight or change the cell color to things that we have no control over, that would help too. Because that's a big part of where these increases come. It's something that we have absolutely zero control over. And so, as we do every year, at least the last couple of years, it's like you're then going through line by line, trying to save a little bit here and there. And really, it's like it needs to be, larger swaths of money that need to be changed. And some of that maybe is in the town's appropriations, but that's a scary thing to do because that then puts us off of everything that we're sort of trying to work towards.
Right.
Yeah, insurance goes up every year. We have no control over it. Workers' comp goes up and down constantly. So, we're kind of at the mercy.
Mm-hmm.
I know. At least in those areas, we know that that's going to change. But having that sort of showing that, I think would be nice.
And you also want your department heads to realistically budget for what they expect to happen. Karen knows she's going through more land record books. So to say to her, you should level fund, even though we know we're going through 6 land record books. Well, we can level fund everything if you want, but that's not going to change the fact that we might have to overspend to get where we need to get because of what's realistically happening.
Right. We need to be realistic.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
We
could say to Eric, we're not going to put any more salt down. We're going to just sand all our roads forever.
Right.
And people are going to complain, and we're not going to have any overtime anymore. Go out at 4 a.m, but you quit at 3, and we'll plow that 6 inches of snow off Burpee Road next morning. And no, that's not going to happen because our phones will ring off the wall. But when we can say we have some control and we don't, we could say, we're not going to play highway department anymore to do overtime. We're going to plow during the day.
Right.
8 hours is done. We're done. And I don't think none of us want to go there either.
Right. Agreed. I definitely think that it's definitely hard, but I think sometimes realistic is a percentage increase. So quantifying it is a hard thing to do.
I look at all the capital things here that I know are coming up, and there's 2 that I would like to add to, but if Valerie tells us the end of next week that you're looking at a 3.5% tax increase or budget increase, then I'm probably going to say, okay, I wanted to put a few more thousand in the roads and a few more thousand in the building fund because we know we got to build a building in a few years. And I don't know what's in them now. It'd be nice to know what was in those now.
Hey, do. Valerie sent us that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Capital Building Fund has about 230,000.
Okay.
And what was the other one?
Capital roads.
That is in negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about fixing the Upper Notch Road and the slide and, or the Basin or Briggs Hill. Can't do a lot of work. Can't order a lot of panels for that when you don't have any money.
I see 35,000 in there, Jen,
Well,
right now.
right, but it was run. I mean, the point being that you put 40 into it, so it was
Right.
running a deficit to start the
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. There is some money in there, but not enough to do a bigger project for sure.
Do we want to go to that table now of capital stuff?
Sure.
Eric, speaking of capital, did ECI ever get back to you on those slides, on those sheet pilings?
No. He came and met with me, but he never got back with me with the price.
Did Carrera get back to you on the blocks?
Yeah, I thought I told you it was $7,500 for the blocks.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad, but then you gotta rent a crane, you gotta get an excavator, a bigger excavator up there to dig out the back of it. And then you gotta get a crane to put the blocks up.
Yeah.
You could try parents on that sheet pile, and they're able to drive it as well.
Yeah, I talked to them. Well, this was a few years ago, Peter, about it to do the upper notch. And to do that section in the upper notch, Tim was figuring about 200,000.
Well, I can't imagine Briggs Hill's going to be any cheaper.
No, I'm guessing, just guessing, about 300 for that. And then they would do the whole work. They do the sheet piling, they dig the road out, put base. They do it both ways, just drive it or refurbish everything.
Yeah. Like they did on Safe Hollow.
Yes, like they did on State Prison Hollow Road. Yep.
So putting 40,000 a year in capital.
What, Joe?
I say putting $40,000 a year in the capital roads going to take a while before we can do that. Right?
Day or two.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay. So what we have here, and I emailed this out earlier. These are the reserve funds currently as presented, as we've been working with. And they tie back up to these sections of the table. Going to capital roads. So this is where we're at. We talked about the Lower Hardscrabble, Estes Road, Munsell Avenue drainage. There won't be a lot to play with. We won't be able to get grant money for Hardscrabble, and I think Eric estimated it being over $200,000 to do. So have to figure that out.
But didn't we fix that here this year, Eric?
Yeah, well, we put a shim over it and we dug out the soft spots. So you should get another 3-4 years out of it without no problem.
Okay, good to know. So right now, according to this, this includes the deficit plus this year's infusion. So I didn't put any numbers then to this, but it shows what we have to work with. Up here is the capital equipment. Eric met with the equipment committee and they said to just leave it is. So this reflects that. Up here is the capital or the fire department's capital budget. So it shows, based upon, this reflects exactly what they've prepared, and it shows a pretty healthy balance each year. So what this is showing, going back to capital equipment, based upon the current plan, these are the bottom line availabilities for those fiscal years based upon the anticipated expenditures. And this ties into the appropriations below, because if you go to the formula, it points to the balance from the previous year, and that's the capital appropriation. So it adds them together, and it just calculates that out going forward. So paving is another one. It's gets a pretty healthy infusion a lot. This was this year. So there's currently, as I understand it, a balance of about 120. Add the appropriation based upon what's budgeted below. We don't know if we're going to get the grant from VTrans. Eric is going to be talking with Ashley on Wednesday to find out what the status of that. So if we have to pay for that entirely, then we're going to end up with only about $30,000 at the end of that year. So this shows, how we can pace these things out based upon what we've forecasted for capital appropriations.
Eric, can I ask you a question then on Moncton Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we didn't get it from Ashley this year, we'd probably more likely get it the following year. Would it pay us to wait and throw it instead?
Yeah, I wouldn't,
If we do it, then we aren't going to get anything for a Pine Street or a North Street or a Mountain Street.
Right.
Lover's Lane.
Right. I'd reconsider and probably pick something else.
Maybe do some shimming up there in the worst spots.
Yeah, I definitely would have to shim it. That's no question.
That's just a question I had. Would we spend all of our money? Because usually we get it every 2 or 3, at least every 3 years. Don't we get some money from the state?
Yeah, I don't know what the years are, but yeah, in so many years you end up getting it, but I can't remember what.
You keep begging long enough, they'll give it to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And if we do get the grant, we can subtract $175,000 from that figure.
Right.
That would be the maximum that we can get.
Yeah, just the paving and grinding alone for that road is $220,000. That doesn't include any stone, gravel, or anything like that. That's just paving.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then just jumping down to sidewalks, this is pretty healthy. I estimate that we're going to put at least $50,000 from the capital sidewalks to the Main Street project, the Main Street sidewalk and lighting project. And if we do that, we still have a end of the year of 16,000 that gets carried over to the next one, plus the appropriation. And then this is what's planned for East Street, according to the sidewalk plan. And then we did get a grant through the Bike Ped program that requires a 20% match to do a scoping study on Munsell Avenue for a new sidewalk. So that's what this is. Figure that wouldn't be coming due until after the next fiscal year, after July. So with the plan, the sidewalk plan, this is, all of these are that. And so it's pretty healthy all along with the $35,000 appropriation. So that seems pretty stable. Capital buildings, it's still an unknown. We know we have some big ticket items coming up. The coach house at Howden Hall still needs to be touched up. We've got $19,000 into the feasibility study so far. Then Holly Hall roof, and so we need to map these up, but it's also got a healthy balance right now. 205,000 is available, so we should try to map out when we're going to be able to do these things based upon our planned appropriations. And that's what these are. These are the planned appropriations.
The library building be in there somewhere if there's more extensive work that needs to be done?
Yep, it would be. And yeah, that's a good point. I can just add that right here.
Okay. And wasn't the Howden Hall Coach House, wasn't it painted along with the
It
Bell
was
House
not.
and the, oh, it wasn't? Okay.
No, that came along a little bit later. Let's see here.
The Howden Hall Coach House was painted, but not the same year the Bell was moved over there because the Bell was just moved a few years ago. The Howden Hall been over when we put the new doors, new windows in, that was a number of years ago.
Right, but they just painted Howden, and I thought they painted the Coach House and the Bell, little Bell building.
Just the Bell, not the Coach
I
House.
see.
Yeah.
And Howden Hall.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Well, can you scoot down a little bit to, I saw it there. Reserve fund, reappraisal fund. It's got 130 in it now.
yep.
And where are we? About 90%, Jen? CLA?
No, they just we just got a letter saying we dropped to 92.25, I think. So in 2 years.
What was our last reappraisal? About 135?
I have no idea. But it took
What I'm trying to get at him, we're looking at another 30,000 there by 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Could we cut that down this year, being we're trying to save a little money to 2,500 this year?
I personally wouldn't, because you're already almost 10 points down and it's only been 2 years since you completed your last reappraisal.
Was it 2 years or 3 years?
Finished in 2018, so I guess now
Okay.
you're at 3
Okay.
years.
All right.
I mean, I'm nervous with how fast the CLA has diminished in the last 2 years. But
Thanks for a seller's market.
It is. I mean, people are buying houses for sell your
Top
house.
dollar,
sell
top
your
dollar
house,
more.
But Michelle's absolutely right. That's why the CLA is going down.
And I don't know that I see it leveling out anytime real soon either, but
No.
So this is obviously still a work in progress, but it gives you an idea of how we can use this once we have some numbers, where we can put things and plan for.
okay.
But it doesn't seem like we're in a position to make any serious adjustments in terms of moving things around and.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
Yeah. Okay. So the spreadsheet I was working on a little while ago, I have to admit I have had to reboot this laptop a couple of times, and there's been a gremlin fooling around with this spreadsheet.
You got squirrels over there on the electrical poles or something? You're
Something, I don't know, but
all the time.
it's been hanging up, and it just did a funky thing where some stuff that I had done isn't there anymore. So I don't want to waste your time while I muck around with it. So
Okay. Any more discussion about budget stuff, or can we move on to the town meeting warnings? Okay, let's do the warnings.
Michelle, next week though, we got to put the budget to bed.
all right.
Right, we have to make a decision. Yep.
So one question on the warnings are the start times of the information meetings. In the
Well,
past,
we usually do the police meeting at 6 and the town meeting at 7.
in the past, yes, but
Yeah.
that won't be the case this time. There won't be a floor meeting. So the question is, But it's shown as 7 o'clock because that's when the select board's been meeting lately. So the question is, does the board want to go back to the traditional start time or the current start time? If that
Well, I mean,
For the police-
if we
for the police
do-
meeting.
for either of them or both.
If we do if we're gonna start at 7 and we do the police meeting at 7, then we can't start town meeting until 8. The informational meeting till 8, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would figure if it starts at 6, because in the past, the police meetings haven't gone for very long. In some instances,
Right.
like 30 seconds. So it could be that, they just flow one into the other without a specific start time for the town portion.
I would suggest keeping them at 7. I think you're right. I think the police meeting probably won't take all that long, and by 7:30 we'd be into the informational meeting. Keeping it at 7 also helps because that's traditionally, even though I know this is a select board meeting and an informational meeting, town meeting evening usually starts at 7. And I know that we'd have a select board meeting before that and then go into town meeting, but this is kind of taking the place of town meeting. So 7 seems like a natural time, and people will sort of be used to that, even though they're
For
not
the
going
informational
to.
meeting, you mean, Ian?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
And then 6 o'clock still for the police meeting, informational.
no,
I
he's,
think 6. I think 6 is because I think we would do it at 6. It would be over quick, and then I guess we would just join 45 minutes later or something like that. I think we would just keep it. Do the police first at 7, and then we could probably move on both nights. Move on like at 7:30 or maybe even earlier than that. We'd be into our informational meeting for the town.
But none of your, I just chiming in, any of the notes that I've put in the meeting minutes have always said 7. So I think if you do 6 for the police, people
Right.
might not even know that it's happening. So
They wouldn't, yeah, they may not even tune in until 7 o'clock. Is that what you're saying, Tasha?
yeah, so it's
Right.
and I know from watching them on TV or whatever, they don't last very long. So you could probably just start at 7 and be done.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I still would like to, town meetings always started at 7. I realize can't call it town meeting. It's an informational Zoom meeting. I'd like to start it at 7 and start the police maybe at 6:30. Not the police at 7. If you're going to start at 7, you're starting a police meeting at 7, and you're not starting your town meeting informational meeting at 7.
Yeah.
Could you say your police meeting starts at 7 o'clock and the informational meeting starts immediately after?
I think you need to set time for that.
You?
Yeah.
Just trying to make it easy.
It's also giving you the ability to take care of some other items you have on the agenda in between. So you don't have to wait. So if your town meeting informational runs longer than expected, you could get some
Sure.
other items done in between, which is what you have done
Mm-hmm.
in the past when there's an actual meeting going. I know it's different, but to try to help save some time.
I mean, people are going to be confused anyway this year. They'll say, I'm going to sign on at 7 for the town informational meeting. And then we start talking police. They're going, did I miss it? Blah, blah. And I'd like to get the police out of the way before 7 o'clock. Police meeting out of the way. And if we start at 6:30, that's fine with me. I think 6 is a little early. I agree.
Beaker, your thoughts?
I don't care.
He's like, he just wants to be done. I can see him yawning there.
I think I'd be okay with 6:30 for the police meeting. I don't know. It's actually not, even though I know it's a select board meeting, it isn't one of our regular scheduled ones. So would we be adding a bunch of stuff to the agenda other than the informational meeting and the police meeting?
Well, the first informational meeting is a regular select board meeting.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking of
Right.
March 1st.
Right.
But we're trying to be accurate. Yeah, I guess 6:30. I mean, and we'll just make it clear, hopefully in the postcard that we send, that the police meeting's at 6:30, and then at 7 o'clock it's the informational meeting.
And for my notes, are you doing that for both meetings or just one meeting?
I think we want to do it for both, just to
For
be
both,
consistent.
yeah.
I mean, we're already getting out of consistency because of what we've said so far, because we haven't figured this out. But I think a half an hour should be fine, unless there's some particular issues that people want to discuss regarding the police budget.
Bruce, you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, 6:30 it is, and 7 for the town meeting.
Great.
So Val, I had a question on the warning.
Mhm.
On a lot of the articles for the appropriations, some of them just say shall the voters appropriate, and then some of them say to vote by Australian ballot on the following. So if we could be consistent,
You saw that too.
Can you,
yeah, like if you look at Article 15, 16, 17, 18,
okay,
and then it jumps, like 19 is fine. Then 20 is 2021.
oh, I see.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And do they have to say coming out of town funds? Everyone says that. Do we have to say that then?
I think that was the model that Sharon was following.
Or can we have the first article say all articles of vote appropriations are voted on are coming out of town funds? So they don't have to say that read it all.
Right, right.
Only one of them there, they got to read and other town funds.
Yeah, the earlier ones, like Article 7 through 14, seem pretty basic, simple. I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We need to be consistent with those.
to that structure. Thanks for catching that.
I sent you just a wording update for Article 13, though.
Okay. While we're there, can you just say what it was?
Oh, let me just, what was my note? Hang on. Shall the voters, to vote by Australian ballot on the following, shall the voters, to Bristol Core, Bristol's non-profit downtown organization committed to increasing and maintaining the economic vitality of the downtown area. It was essentially just specifying that what it is, Bristol's non-profit downtown, instead of just an organization. I wanted to be more specific. And I think, organizations that are specific to Bristol, I think it's always good to put that in there so people know, because some of them, Bristol Core obviously has it in the name, but others may not.
Okay, sounds good.
But I'd email that to you in a
Yep, you
PDF
did.
note.
Anything else for that warning?
Yeah, I had a question in terms of how are the articles, what determines their rank? Because you have a lot of stuff that is like at the Article 35, 36 are directly associated with the town as opposed to appropriations from outside groups. Would it be better to have those articles that are specifically for the town, like the rec department budget or the public works? Shouldn't those be closer to the top in terms of more important articles?
It's just following the format of ages. Yeah, that's the order.
I just feel it was odd sort of looking at it when you're like, okay, you're looking at the first few articles and you've gone through, I'm now looking at Tri-Valley Transit, and then I'm going back to the town in terms of like, then now we're talking about the general operating budget. Like, I feel like those are the most important things for this town. I feel that they should be some of the first articles that people are looking at and voting on.
And since they used to be coming from the floor, I don't think there's been given any thought as to how they would be on the ballot, because normally they're not there when you're talking about the budget.
Right. And it's something on the floor that you're dealing with much earlier than the
Right. So they
appropriations,
probably
right?
should be moved to the top, but
Yeah.
since this is the first year we've done everything by Australian
Sure.
ballot.
Right.
I think we always tried to, when we did the appropriations, we always tried to put the Bristol organization in the past. I think if you look back at the town report, you'll see that like anything affiliated with Bristol is before any of the others.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. I think we
You mean
should.
like the
I think it
town
would-
band? You're talking about like
Yeah.
the town band, the 4th of July committee?
Yeah, they're ahead of Actor and all
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah, so if I guess for this, Articles 34, 35, and 36 would be moved to the top, where you feel that's appropriate, and then just a little bit of moving of some of the articles that are Bristol specific entities. But it's great that all the descriptions are in there. That works really nicely, I think.
Going back to the top, and the article that I tucked in there, Article 5A, dealing with the transfer of $75,000. Are folks okay with how that's described? For the purpose of contributing to the purchase and properly equipping of a new fire department tanker pumper?
It's just, it's an engine, not tanker pumper.
Okay.
And that'll be changed to Article 6, right? It's not going to be a 5A.
Right. Well, since
Okay.
I figured some things would get rearranged, we'll
Exactly.
finalize all the numbering when the dust settles.
Anything else? Okay.
May I ask
Ready?
this is Brett. May I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I just Valerie, your language about transferring that 75,000. Could you read that one more time?
Sure. Will the voters authorize the transfer of $75,000 from the Fire Department Equipment Reserve Fund to the Fire Department Vehicle Fund for the purpose of contributing to the purchase and properly equipping of a new fire department engine?
That language, it should be for the purchase only, not for equipment.
Okay.
Because the equipment is already outlined in the capital equipment plan, the equipment that we do need to purchase, but we just want to make sure it's very clear that the money in that fund is for the purchase of the vehicle only.
Okay.
No associated equipment.
Okay. I'm glad I asked.
Thank you.
Right. Super.
I'm glad I'm listening.
Anything else on that? Okay. Police warning. You'll fix the times
time
on
change.
these, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Other than that, that was all I saw on those.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we're cruising.
Okay.
So we're saying, just checking, we're talking about having during a regular select board meeting, which will commence at 6:30, and during a special select board meeting that'll commence at 7 or 6:30 for this particular one, and then on the other one, our main one, it's 7 and 7.
That's not a select board meeting. That is a town informational meeting.
And it's my understanding they're both going to start at 6:30, and that police will be the first part on both. And because in the past there were 2 police informational meetings, and then the town would follow after that at 7.
Okay.
Police gets done at 6:45. We're not starting at 6:45. We're gonna wait till 7.
Well, that's the thing. I'm curious about that in terms of because we have all these meetings. I want to make sure that people who perhaps aren't interested in the police know exactly how to connect and which link to use and at what time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't change. One has to say 7 and one has to say 6:30.
So you want
Right.
separate Zoom meetings set up? Continuation.
I don't think that would be necessary. Folks can just log in to the same link just later.
Yeah, I mean, if they come in early, they come in early.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to change the links because right now they're both scheduled for 7. We'll have to
That can
change.
be edited. The
Well,
links.
you don't, yeah, you
They're
can
the
just
same.
edit them. You don't have to change the link.
No, but you have to edit them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't change the link that you'll have in there. No, I guess my thinking was just not to confuse people. Yes, it would be internally, it would be the same Zoom meeting and the links would be the same, but on our police district warning, it would be 6:30. And then on our town meeting warning, it would be 7:00.
7, correct.
And just so we're clear, so if someone looked at both of those, you'd see those 2 different times. Oh, I'm not interested in the police. They join at 7, and we're still in that meeting. It just happens to be the one that started at 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is much clearer.
Okay, we good to move on?
Yes, my only question to that is, does it make a difference because only people in the police district, but they're not voting, so it doesn't matter, but can anyone ask a question at that meeting, I guess, even if you're outside the district? Does
An
that,
informational meeting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody
Okay.
can ask.
okay,
Right, for both police, yeah, for both police meetings. I think anyone can ask. It would just be a voting thing that we couldn't allow
right, okay.
or wouldn't be able to allow.
I just wanted to clarify.
All right. So I think the only minutes we have are December 21st, which we put off from last week. I sent Val my changes. And I think, Ian, you had sent yours to her last week.
Yes. Maybe.
Stop it, Darla.
I'm sorry.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
Sorry.
Somebody want to make a motion to approve December 21st minutes with changes?
So moved with changes.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Raise your hand, wave, whatever. Okay. Motion carried. Accounts payable warrant and liquor licenses. You got the warrant, right, Tasha?
Yep, the 76,808.47.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I don't remember, but it's the one I sent you.
Yeah, Jen sent it to me before
Okay,
that.
good.
So.
All right. Any liquor license, Jen? I assume not.
Yes, no, there's 2.
There are 2.
There are 2. One
Can you
is
tell me who they?
and the other one is Bobcat,
Okay, and who was the other one?
Maple Fields.
Okay, so we just need to sign them, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not special events, right? They're just the normal.
Just,
No,
yeah,
this is
liquor
the
license.
normal renewal that they have to
Renewals.
renew their liquor
Okay.
licenses by April 1st.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so you guys we all have to stop and sign this week.
Darla's already been by, so Darla gets the star.
Oh, you can't sign.
How's-
That's the rule.
How is that even possible? We're in the meeting right now.
I am really good.
That's because she was the last one to sign all the rest of the ones we
That's
already
true.
signed.
She
I'm
got
gonna
lucky.
say that part, Michelle.
I didn't sign something we haven't approved yet.
Okay. Other business, correspondence, documents, reports, anything, Val?
Not for me, but I think Eric wanted to bring something up.
Okay. How about it, Eric?
Yeah, we need to relocate Arnell
Oh,
on, or dump on, at least in the wintertime.
Can you elaborate on that?
We can't get any good material.
I was there Saturday when they had to pull out with the truck.
Oh, okay.
So
And then
it's
when they
either-
Yeah, Eric.
Well, I was just gonna say, when we come back, you know, the worst time is between 10 and 12.
Yep.
It seems like everybody waits to the end to go. And then if we get stuck in line, we're 10 minutes before we can get back down in the pit to get reloaded. So
Mhm.
you guys, we gotta figure out something for them to do
So
so we can get in and out.
Hasn't this happened every year? And it's just
Oh, this has been a worst year. Last year wasn't this bad.
It's, Ian, part of it is that it has to do with COVID because nobody can get out of their cars. I mean, at one point they
Okay.
were only doing one car through the center, and it was like, oh my God, at least you got room for 2 cars. So then they started doing 2 cars through, but it just,
I broke
he's
this
right,
up a
Eric's
little-
right. You know, I think it's when people get up, they don't get up early, so they aren't there at 8. They wait until 10, and it's like,
I
God,
brought this up.
we like to get there before 10.
Okay.
Remember?
Yeah, I know Jill talked about
Kale
that.
out here for 20 minutes waiting to come back down from my house down to the end of the street, down to the barn.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so do we have a suggestion for another location?
no, not really. I don't really know. I just need to try to figure something out. Either that or because of COVID, tell them that we're not doing trash pickup anymore until spring. The
Then what do all those people do?
That's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Figure it out for themselves. We don't have trash. Well, we do have trash in Starksville, but I mean, I don't go to the trash. I take care of my own.
I think, Eric, what I was going to suggest to Kale a couple weeks ago when he was out here is drive down the wrong side of the road, go all, and if you meet a car, say you got to back up. I've got to get to my pit.
Well, we can do that, but then
I think he starts down the left-hand lane, headed towards the dump, you know, headed towards the garage, and people see him coming. They're gonna say, "Well, I gotta wait for the dump truck to get out of the way. He's bigger than I am." I think you guys take a little initiative and tell him to drive down the wrong side of the road and get to the pit. I agree with you a lot. We need
do that anyways, but
we're not going to get it moved before the end of the winter, and then it's going to be over with. And probably with COVID, I think they'll get out of the car and move it quicker next year.
yes, I'm hoping they will. Yeah, but the other thing you got to remember too, Joe, is we got a wing hanging off that side.
Yeah, I know you do.
And if
I
the
agree
cars
with
ain't pushed over, there's not a lot of room.
Yeah,
moving down through there.
I know when I was there Saturday, I think Eric, I don't know if it was you or one of the other guys pulled up from getting sand and had to get up in front of the garage, which then we couldn't get a pulling around, so we had to wait. And
Yep.
actually, Chad just backed in, but you know, it's very tight in there. What about the high school? Would the high school let them use that?
They might be able to use the third parking lot, maybe.
Yeah.
That's something that you'd have to ask the board.
School
I guess.
district. Yeah.
What about the fire station?
That'd be in the same. You'd be in the same cluster if they had a call.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not enough parking and room there.
What about the Legion? Right there.
That would be tight
No.
too.
I think that's one, that one in and one out. I was thinking
One in, one out.
the old Autumn Park building area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, over by the police station.
Yeah.
Where we do the CF drop offs.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be a spot for them too. Yep.
There's 2 ways to get in and out of there.
Well, yeah, and they can drive in down by the police department and come back out the other way up to the other parking lot.
Yeah.
That's a Kevin Harper question.
Right. And traffic would be much less over the weekend, or anybody parked there.
Right.
Right.
And it's not too far a distance, you know, in terms of it making a change. If we changed it within the next few weeks, people would be driving down Pine anyway and could just make that detour and go.
And yeah, we'd have to put up some signs. They'd have to put up some signs to.
Hey, well, if Kevin wants that business park, you better let us get some trash going over there.
Easy.
I don't think.
That was a joke, by the way. That was a joke.
I bet he would say yes.
You got to realize one thing, though. He probably would say yes, but you know they run a business, and if somebody slips and falls, guess who they're going to sue?
Yeah.
That's what businesses
Well-
have to look at. Their bottom line: who's going to get hurt on their property?
Yeah, but Joe, you were just suggesting that the big trucks drive it down the wrong way of the road towards people dropping up their trash. That's even worse.
But I wonder if they're not getting out of their cars. We're talking about workers only right now.
In Virginians, it does help when they have 2 sets of lanes, and then there's more space between when you stop for them to take it out and then to pay, because there's not much of a, like right now there's not a big space, so it's a big backup. And then one problem is one guy got out of his car and stopped the whole process for like 5 minutes. So
I think Jim's got something to say today.
Yeah.
Already? How many more weeks do you have to do this? What's the chances of guys getting called out? Are you gonna now have to change the whole routine and everybody in town's gonna have to be notified of this? Leave it alone. Drive down the wrong side of the road. If necessary, put a traffic cone with a sign, stop here, give it a space between there and the garage. If you have an officer on duty that day, have him stationed there for a couple hours and he can motion the trucks through. Don't make a big deal out of this, guys. Goodbye.
Jim, we got plows and wings on. We can push the cars out of the way.
Amen.
There you go. That's good. Especially the foreign cars. I don't like foreign cars anyway.
Yeah.
Don't create
Thanks,
a
Jimmy.
problem, guys. You know, leave it alone. Have fun.
Okay, so what are we doing?
Food for thought for something for you guys to think about. If you can come up
Okay.
with an easier plan or easier something for us, that would be great.
Okay.
Eric,
All right.
Eric, next time it happens on a Saturday, I'll park over there from 10 to 11, 10 to 12. Say, nope, hold it up. Come on, Kale. Come on. The other truck.
There you go. Okay.
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 Town administrators report.
I have nothing to add to my written report. It's just been
Okay.
a time of budgets and other things and project stuff and nothing new.
Okay, and those the select board members, I know Val sent out the select board report, town administrators report. Make sure you read it and give her your comments
Oh, I have.
ASAP. Okay.
Was that R&L rubbish the only round
Yes.
table?
We haven't
No, that
gotten
wasn't
to
a round
I
that.
haven't done roundtable.
Oh, okay, you skip. Okay, you skip.
Okay, I guess we're doing select board roundtable. Ian.
I want to weigh. This is a technology thing. I like that Jen shared the budget documents, but I want to weigh where it's easier for us to look at other kind of documents. Like we were just wondering about like what we have in the capital funds. And I was looking through the town report, and like all those details are nice to have there, but it would be nice to have like living electronic documents that we can have access to. Like I made a suggestion to Jen, like, and she ended up doing it in the tab system, but having like a folder that was shared that has all the budgets. Like I wanted to see the water budget and things like that. And I know that we do that later now, but I feel like I am with all these documents and stuff, we need to find a way where we can use the SharePoint thing to have more stuff accessible to us. At least for me, it's helpful because then I can pull stuff that's not a year old and we can see what's going on. So I want to figure out some way to work on the SharePoint side of things and have sort of access to some of those documents. And they don't need to be, read write, just read only so we can sort of see what's going on. And I don't know if we structure it in the way like the town report, since we're all very familiar with that, to be able to get access to those kind of documents.
Okay. Anything else, Ian?
No.
Okay. Eager. He's good. Jolie.
I brought my two up to Eric about sanding the sidewalks and then the truck. And third one, talking to Brother Peter today, Eric, and you said that when we were looking over all the capital equipment, and they had a meeting the other night, and they said leave it alone. He said the committee thought they could move the loader out a year. Am I getting two different stories or what?
That was one of his thoughts. Yes, it was.
But the
But
committee,
at the end,
the committee as a whole, what did the committee as a whole say?
committee as a whole said leave it as it is right now.
Okay.
Is that right, Peter? Is that what I remember?
That is what we said. We figured where the money was at, that we were gonna possibly get more for a trade-in because he expected a bigger loader, and there were some discussions as far as stuff that had wants as opposed to needs.
Yeah, I heard that, but I also, a truck that's going to be here maybe by the end of the week, we still are leasing it until July 1?
After
next
July
October.
1st,
Huh?
Till next October,
Till October of when?
This year.
2022. Or 2021, sorry, 2021.
2021, we won't own it yet completely. And as he said, and this board agreed, minus Darla and minus Ian, I think even minus Michelle, was when we order a piece of equipment, we're going to pay for it, have the money in the bank, not keep leasing it. And the last two pieces of equipment, the grader and the truck, and now maybe a loader, we'll have to have it at least for a year. And
No, if we can't afford
15, 10, 12 years ago. Well,
if we can't afford it, it gets pushed out.
The loader will.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know then. Okay, now keep leasing.
The way the numbers work, it quoted the next size up loader, and it's considerably more.
Okay.
The only reason these other two pieces of equipment got bumped up, you know as well as I do, the reason why is because they needed to be.
2 motor jobs.
Right. So
was losing antifreeze and the we know about the intertrashable.
Right. So other than that,
I get it. I get it why we traded those 2 pieces. I just don't want to have that be a trend. If we could get another year.
No.
Okay.
Okay, you good? All right, Darla?
I have been approached by 2 community members who are curious about the idea of moving town meeting when we're able to meet to Saturday from our traditional evening meeting. These folks both have families, young families, and an evening meeting is near impossible for them to make. And they're wondering what the process was. And I didn't have an answer for that. So I bring that to this group.
Let's ask Eric. Eric, how'd Starksboro do it? They meet on Saturday now, or used to.
No, we won't this year, of course, but yeah, we meet on Saturday mornings I think it starts at 8.
And how's your attendance been? And did they have to petition the town to move that?
That I don't know, Joel. Participants is about the same as you guys have in Bristol that show up to the town meeting. There's not a big difference between what we have on a Saturday and what you guys have on a Monday night.
But
you're gonna have it doesn't
per capita
matter.
base.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, Darla, what you have it. Monday nights, there's going to be a certain few people that can't make it, and then if you change it to a Saturday, you're going to have the people that work Saturdays that usually go to Monday nights meeting that are going to be able to make Saturdays. Right. So it's a hard call.
Yeah.
I would hope, Darla, in the future after this year, we could have a big screen at town hall, and if you wanted to call in on Zoom, you could still attend that way and ask your questions.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought. I don't know.
You wouldn't be able to vote on a 4 vote, but you could at least maybe influence a 4 vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still curious about a Saturday meeting. I understand what you're saying, Eric. I know that, there's only so many people interested in coming to town meeting. I agree. But I have a feeling that a meeting, I'm thinking the same number of folks from Starksboro come to your meeting on a Saturday, but per capita, that's a higher percentage, I would imagine, than what we have here in Bristol. And I just wonder if we wouldn't have even more people. Of course, then where would we put them? So that would be the happy problem, right? Where do you put them?
Right.
They feed them pizza too.
Well, some communities have a meeting until, their meeting goes till noon, they break for lunch, they come back, and sometimes there's a meal and all of that kind of thing. It's happened, it's handled differently in different, parts of the state, but it was a question that came to me and I said that I would ask. So I'll let you know if they want to pursue it any further.
Well, part of our job is engagement with the town. So I think we would want to ask and maybe put it out there to people for next year, perhaps, if a change was made, would people support that and be interested in that?
Mm-hmm.
Since they've been here. Say that again.
non-binding question at the end of the ballot.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, something like that. You know, I've been here 13 years, and I remember going, and it seemed like the ones that I first went to, maybe the second or third year I lived here, were very well attended, and each one after that seems to be fewer and fewer people. So I think anything that we could do to hopefully get those numbers higher, like get some pizza in the place. I mean, there's always great refreshments in the evening one, but you can obviously change that up if it's during the day. I think that's a good thing to pursue and to look into.
Yeah, we do a whole potluck thing. People bring in dishes and they sell, like you guys do in Bristol, they sell like chili and all sorts of stuff there.
Nice. The only other thing I have, thank you for entertaining that, number one. The only other thing I have is that I was contacted Friday about, there was a student at BES that bolted across the road at the end of the day in front of a moving vehicle and was grabbed and saved by one of the aides there, who happens to be my son, Matthew. So I just wanted to give Matthew a shout out for being selfless and helping this young man not be injured. It was just a young guy who lives across the street and just headed home. So Matthew happened to be there, and I had a couple of phone calls for people telling me about that. So I wanted to give him a little recognition for that.
Yeah, good job. Nice job.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay. We have an executive session.
Hold on,
I'll make a
Michelle, hold on.
Yeah.
Back to your question on Saturday morning town meeting. Peter, you said about a non-binding question. Would you want to put that on the end of year ballot this year? Because a lot of people are going to be sitting doing a ballot, about 3 pages of it, checking out stuff. Would it be a good year to do? I'm just asking the question. Would it be a good?
No, I think it's a good idea.
I was serious, Joel.
I know you are, and I am serious. Would it be a good year to do that this year?
Yeah.
Question.
I mean, why would you wait next year if Daryl was asking the question now?
No, it's perfect. I was thinking like, oh, we would ask on Front Porch Forum, but that makes no sense. Like putting it on the ballot right now makes the most sense. You're absolutely right.
Makes good sense.
Well, we're going to have to tell Valerie and the rest of the girls down there, Sharon and Jen, we want to do this not by February 3rd.
Right.
Right. It'll be Article 65.
Exactly.
If it is in favor.
Valerie's sitting there with a puzzled look on her face.
Wait a minute. Jen's asking a question. Go ahead, Jen.
If it's an overwhelming yes or whatnot, I know it's non-binding, but then, or if it's an overwhelming no, or if it's a 50-50, you guys will just decide yourselves, or I'm just curious. I'm not like if
You get paid the big dollar for it, Jen. Make those big tough questions.
Split vote.
Answers.
Are you just going to decide yourselves next year? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to make you answer. I just would be interested to know, because it's non-binding. Just because it gets voted as yes doesn't mean that's what will happen for next year, I guess, is my clarification question.
I think that's true.
It would depend on how it's written. You want to do it so it's just informational and explain that it's non-binding. But I think we would just see what the return was, what people's thoughts were. And if it was an overwhelming agreement to do it, then obviously yes. If it's a 50-50, then we'd have to have a discussion about that and see how, and go from there, I guess.
Do you guys meet the Monday before November voting? I can't remember.
You mean when we have a presidential election?
Or a governor, yeah.
Governor election?
No, that doesn't matter.
No. I thought you guys, I didn't know if you guys met. I can't remember.
We may meet, but it's not any kind of informational meeting or anything like that.
Okay.
The only thing is, I guess, in terms of when it would happen, it would be the Saturday before voting on the Tuesday, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do like the sort of attending the evening meeting on the Monday, and then you're thinking about voting on Tuesday. It does change that sort of dynamic, but not to say that wouldn't be successful, because other towns are already doing that. But that is one thing to think about. But yeah, so it's all on that question to make sure that you have that clarity, so people understand it's not like, an earlier Saturday or something, or I don't know.
That's a good point.
It would probably make it would make some lives easier in terms of the setup and things like that when in-person voting. Well, I guess in-person voting is still happening in terms of not having an informational meeting that goes quite long, and then you're going into the next day early setting up. So there are advantages to having it that previous Saturday, I would think.
Let's
Yeah,
just say it would make that Wednesday look a lot better than it looks right now.
Right. You might actually be half alive still. Yeah, I think it's worth putting on the ballot. What are your thoughts, Val?
Sure. It'd be interesting to see the result.
Well, heck, what other questions do we have for people?
Stop Ian now.
If we've got
Finish our meeting. That's the next question.
Would this be Article 37 to say shall the voters shall the voters change the meeting day to Saturday?
Consider changing town meeting day to the Saturday before voting day.
Or just
Saturday before the Tuesday.
are pondering the question of more voter participation, and with Saturday's voting, town meeting on Saturdays, help that? Do you believe we should, something to the nature, believe we should change it to Saturday?
It's a yes or no
A few
question.
minutes and I could write
Well,
that.
you could even do
Yeah,
like
give me a few minutes and I could write that out for you.
you could even do an option though too, and say,
Oh, right.
do you prefer Saturday or Monday? And if you prefer both, just select both.
Yeah.
No, it's gotta be a yes or no question for the
Right.
ballot.
Nah, I like
It's
options,
gotta be
Margo.
a yes or no question for the tabulator to take
Oh,
it.
right.
Oh.
Want to come
Well, can you have yes is Saturday and no is Monday and just pick one?
Would it be, would you prefer a Saturday morning meeting over
Wait,
over a
does
Monday
that work?
evening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think the yes on Saturday and no is Monday. That actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's very sneaky.
That's like heads I win, lose, right?
That's
I
right.
win, tails you lose.
Right. Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, I
you
think
good, Val?
Consider changing.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can review that.
We'll work out the language.
Okay, all right. We need to go in executive session, so I will make a motion to enter executive session to discuss personnel matters. Ready, second?
Okay.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye, raise your hand, wave, whatever. Okay.
Thanks, Eric.
All right.
Night, Eric.
Good night, guys.
Night.